terminologies we use. Derivable from the ultimate source. What is derivability? If we talk about from ultimate source, something has to be derived. It has a predictability, it has deducibility also, and there are certain elements of chance positions. So what could be the mechanistic position to understand such, dynamically rich, complex entity, which is changing, and this change is to be properly understood from a mechanistic perspective also, if we want to really objectivize from materialistic sense. Not mere summation of earlier evolutes. It is definitely not a mere summation of earlier evolutes. Is such a theory of emergence under a perennial trial? Like if we say, or if I put it like Morgan's position, that there is a difference between emergent and a resultant. So a need for an absolute distinction between emergent and resultant, is it applicable here in Sankhya perspective from Tanmatra's position? Because we know that there are Tattvantar Parinama and Dharmantar Parinama from Lakshana and Avasthavad. But the point is, emergent must give way to resultant. Is it a principal kind of situation? But can a resultant not have a kind of emergent property in it all the time? In a way, it is a Satkaryavad and Asatkaryavad in a modified form.
Oh,
yes.
Dr. Lalit, I'm sorry to interrupt you. You have already taken your time. So
perfect. So I'm just winding up now. So now we know that this is Akasha, Shabda, and this. My point is, can I smell sky? And if this smelling sky is a cross-model perception or cognition from Sankhya, this leads to interconnected and Tanmatras. And here, Avishesha, like Tanmatras, are connecting and interacting with Vishesha. And this is where I want to bring up the cognitive epistemological perspective of Sankhya. I'm sorry for extending this. I didn't realize that, somehow. But thanks to the team, the entire team, and the Department of Philosophy and Religion, PHU. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Lalit, for your excellent presentation. Now we have our next speaker, Dr. D. Pramod, who is Dean Research and Development, Malareddy University, Hyderabad, Telangana. He will be making his presentation on thought processing unit mind. So if Dr. D. Pramod is there, I think we can. Dr. D. Pramod, are you there? I think we can invite some other speaker. So next we have Dr. Rajiv Lochan Behra. He is assistant professor in the Department of Philosophy and Religion, Banaras Hindu University. His areas of specialization are analytic philosophy, philosophy of language, philosophy of mind, and critical discourse analysis, especially Barthel's philosophy of semantics. He has also published one book and number of research papers in reputed journals. So I would welcome you, sir. Please come.
Thank you, sir. At first, my pranam to the chair of the session, Professor D. N. Tiwari, sir, and my love to all the research scholars. I would like to present the paper on mechanism of yoga and its relation to microcosm-macrocosm harmony, a philosophical discourse. In the present paper, I propose to address some imperative issues in the Plato's philosophy of yoga and to show how these issues are dealt with the Kapil's philosophy of yoga as well as Patanjali's philosophy of yoga. I also hope to show the implication that this discussion might have for philosophical discourse Specifically, I shall be discussing the microcosm-macrocosm relation. The philosophy of yoga demonstrates a common understanding and development in their views, and these concepts refer to the divine and human in order to arrive at the interrelation between the microcosm and macrocosm. The further query raised is whether these views of philosophy of ego are attempting to comprehend the nature of the divine or the nature of human, or whether these apparent ends are in fact part of their quest for absolute reality. My conclusion would be closest to the sympathetic towards microcosm-macrocosm harmony, intoxicated by the macrocosm. Basically, as you know that yoga means union. It's a method of spiritual union, and to achieve such union is to reach the state of perfect yoga. Yoga is also considered as meditational technique through which we can maintain microcosm-macrocosm harmony to avoid spiritual ignorance. According to the philosophy of yoga, to maintain the unitive state of triple elements, mind, body, and spirit, yoga is needed. For this philosophy, all these elements are one and cannot be separated from each other. We, the human, suffers from problems of mind-body dualism, which binds us to the cycle of rebirth due to spiritual ignorance. The removal of the ignorance, we should follow meditational technique of yoga. Therefore, the philosophy of yoga of Kapil, Patanjali, and Plato has emphasized in this paper. First, philosophy of Kapil's yoga. As you know, Kapil's philosophy is called Sankhya philosophy. Sankhya is the language of yoga, which is primarily built upon foundations of deep reflection and dependent experience. It describes the full spectrum of human existence by revealing the basic elements that make up the macrocosm and microcosm. It teaches us about the component of body, spirit, and mind, from the gross element that make up the physical body to the more subtle elements of the mind and consciousness. It states that the individual human being has 25 elements. Out of the 25 elements, 2 are the sources from which the whole universe evolves. That is Purusha and Prakriti. Within Purusha, there are 3 fundamental forces called Mahaguna, Tattva, Rasa, Rajas, and Sattva. From Prakriti rise also the 3 elements of the mind: higher, intuitive, self-knowing mind, which connects with consciousness. The lower mind thinks, rational mind, which connects consciousness to the outer world via the senses, and the ego, that is called ahankara, which consists in a space between the higher and the lower mind. These 25 elements were further simplified into 2 more maps of the mind, body, spirit, the 3 shariras and the 5 kosmos. And these both identify layers within our experience which correlate with each other and the tattvas. The Sarira and Kosmos are both used to draw one's awareness inside, traveling from the physical to the energetic and causal bodies towards the very essence of our being, which Sankhya tells us is, that is called Brahman, undivided oneness. This moving from the physical to the subtle diverse experience of the bodies to impart tools into practice of meditation and inner contemplation. Sankhya discriminates between Purusha and Prakriti so as to show the liberation of Purusha. The focus is to discriminate between Purusha and the higher mental states, Manas and Buddhi, which are part of Prakriti. Prakriti is a fully real material substance and not the creation of Brahman's mysterious power. Here, Sankhya holds 2 important physical positions such as metaphysical realm and realism and metaphysical pluralism. For Sankhya's metaphysical realism, the external world is real, while in metaphysical pluralism, there are many individual souls that will remain individuals and isolated even after their liberation from Prakriti. With regard to macrocosm and macrocosm relation, Sankhya Darshan describes the human body as a mini universe, and whatever elements exist in the universe, they exist in the human body also. Every entity is constituted and coexistent in harmonious relation of all the fundamental elements, which creates the bodies with eternal order. Even in natural process, these bodies and its components exist in harmonious relation with each other, though the microcosm is important, but microcosm is not isolated from macrocosm. Now, come to the next philosophy of Patanjali's yoga. Yoga is a method for making a bridge among body, mind, and spirit. It's a holistic science which may signify the actual sense of the holistic life of a human. Human needs physical fitness with beautifulness, which is considered as physical power, sagacious mind with creative power, and to be a part and to contact with the one who have made us and made all things. The sage Patanjali is the founder of the yoga system. Yoga is the control of thought waves in mind. The mind is made up of three components: monos, buddhi, and ahankara. Mono is the record, faculty which receives impressions gathered by the senses from the outside world. Buddhi is the discriminative faculty which classified these impressions and reacts to them. Ahankara is the ego sense which claims these impressions for its own and stores them up to individual knowledge. Yoga provides a step-by-step path towards enlightenment for the spiritually unevolved. The 8 steps of yoga are yama, niyama, asana, pranayam, pratyaham, dharana, dhyana, and samadhi. The first 2 are ethical in nature, and the next 3 steps means for physical fitness, while the last 3 steps are connected with meditation. With regard to microcosm and macrocosm relation, Patanjali argues that Chitta is constituted from monos, that is, and monos plus ahankara plus buddhi. And the Chitta is the substratum of the entire matrix of experience of the soul, which takes from the human body. In fact, Purusha takes from Prakriti as Jivatma. To have the experience of liberated its karmic cycle, ego eventually gets an aspirant of the experimental dimension of the body and mind and spirit. The final end in which the yoga finds self is the whole universe. We must bear in mind that is yoga, there is to divergence between the cosmological and the psychological. The macrocosm's universe and microcosmic human being. Now, philosopher Plato, in his 3 dialects, he has discussed in his 3 dialects, Phaedo, Meno, and Republic. Plato's are interpreted through the lens of yoga. For Plato, the soul and the body are 2 separate entities. The body is the temporary physical material aspect of the persons, and the soul is the essential being, the essence of the person, that is immaterial aspect. In Plato's understanding, the soul is temporarily united with the physical body, but can leave the body and move on. In his work, Plato believes that the soul is immortal. The soul animates the person by giving its life. So if a soul is a life-giving essence, then it is obvious that it must always have life. Now, come to his second dialect, that is Meno. In his Meno, Plato argues that our intuitions were evidence of knowledge attained before birth. This too, Plato shows that our soul had once lived in the world of perfect forms. Next, come to the next dialogue, that is Republic. Plato introduced a story known as the myth of Hades, in which he raised some ideas about the immortality of the soul. In the story, all through the mouth of series of courses of the soldiers and cold AIDS dies on the battlefield. At least the appeared to die, but 10 days later, when the fighting was over and it was safe for the bodies to the recover for funerals, there was no sign that his body had decomposed at all. On the 12th day, when Earth's body had been placed on the funeral pyres, he suddenly woke up. She suddenly came back to life. This was able to tell everyone all that he had experienced of the afterlife. Now, come to the last point is something about the philosophy of yoga and microcosm and microcosm. I draw the points from 2 texts. So it is called Yoga, Mastering the Basics, written by Sundra Anderson, and the next one is by uh, yes, Pandit Rajmani Tandunait, his book is The Practice of the Yoga Sutra. There he said the human body, more precisely the chakras, the heart, the vertices of consciousness in the body are the gateway to discovering the mystery of the universe and our life in it. And Sundara Anderson has said that it is, yoga is a link between two worlds, such as macrocosm and macrocosm. So it's a very powerful link, powerful links. And in his thought, he said, according to tantric maxim, tatha brahmande yatha pindande. Now, that the argument point is that in defense of macrocosm through philosophy of yoga, according to Sankhya, man is the macrocosm, but the universe is the man is the microcosm, and the universe is the macrocosm, or man in the microcosm of the universe. But the universe is referred to an brahmando, and man is referred to the brahmando. Plato also believed that the divine, who is the immanent in the world, also situated a part of himself within every individual. Now, concluding, the concluding point is that this is to hold the ideas by submitting the views that macrocosm is more prior to microcosm, and the one idea is that macrocosm are already in macrocosm, but there is need of right knowledge to identify their existence and reality. So there is need of yoga, because the mechanism of yoga can help them to be alive within the living world. The second idea is that after getting their identification, existence, and understanding the reality, they have to maintain the harmony between macrocosm and microcosm. So there is also need of yoga, because only through yoga they can evade their spiritual ignorance. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Rajiv, for your interesting presentation. Next, let me invite Dr. D. Pramod. Sir, are you there? Can you hear me? Dr. D. Pramod, I think he is there, connected online, but not responding. Okay, so we can move to the next. Next, we have Dr. Rajan. Dr. Rajan, are you there?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Am I audible to you?
Yes, you are audible. So Dr. Rajan is Assistant Professor, Kalinga Institute of Social Sciences, Bhubaneswar, and he will be making his presentation on Yoga, Sanskriti, or hermeneutics.
Yeah, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. I'm really delighted that I am being a part of this family festival being organized and celebrated at my department of philosophy and religion, Banaras in the university. First of all, I would like to thank to my chairperson, Professor D.N. Tiwari sir, that he would be guiding me if I make any sort of mistake. Furthermore, I would like to express my deep sense of gratitude to my teachers, all my teachers. D. Gangadhar sir is in front of me. Furthermore, I would like to express my gratitude to Kripasankar Roja sir, who taught me Sankhya and Yoga during the classes. Now, let me express some thoughts, or rather to say some questions regarding to the philosophy of yoga. So when I am going to say something about the philosophy of yoga, I have certain presumption which I have taken from Hegelian dialectic. So there is a very romantic, presupposition have been accepted by lots of thinkers and also have been, embraced in the contemporary scenario. And that presumption is that कि बहुत सारी चीजें ऐसी होती हैं जिनको हम ट्रांसेंड नहीं कर सकते, like we are limited or bounded by those things. So these things follows like the history, culture, tradition, time, space, genetics. So if we accept this assumption कि हम history को, culture को, tradition को transcend नहीं कर सकते, then what would be the philosophy of yoga at that point of time? Furthermore, if I try to associate the philosophy of yoga with this presumption कि जो योग सूत्र है पतंजलि जी का वो किसी हिस्टोरिकल सर्कमस्टेंसेस में या हिस्टोरिकल पॉइंट ऑफ टाइम में लिखा गया है, तो उस वक्त हम फिलोसफी ऑफ योग की इंटरप्रिटेशन क्या करेंगे? Furthermore, when we try to understand the idea of history according to Hegel, Hegel says that history is a dynamic process which does not stand at one place. So I have assumed this thing that our ideas, our notion, our conception of something is historically conditioned, or to say like we cannot transcend the history. Hegel was very much, uh, what what to say. Hegel was very much impressed with this thesis. And furthermore, even if someone says that philosophy aims to overcome the conditioning, philosophy helps us to transcend the conditioning, still Hegel would say that this very idea is also have been caused by the history. So when I accepted this presumption, now I come to the very first question, like what would be the modern interpretation of yoga if we accept that we are historically conditioned? Like, will it remain the same as it was in the time period of Patanjali's, like Yoga Chitvritti Nirodha or the Vyas Bhashya Yoga Samadhi? Or will we have something modern? Like nowadays we proclaim that yoga is a way of life, or it is a holistic way of life, it promotes human well-being and so on. So I just want to put this question, like, will the interpretation of yoga be differ from the ancient time in the modern time, or will it remain the same? Now coming to the second question, what would be the modern interpretation of Ashtanga yoga, which is a very important and integral part of Patanjali Yoga Darshan? Like, when we try to understand the yam and niyam, in the ancient time, it is accepted that the yam and niyam was used for the purification of self. आत्म शुद्धि के लिए हमने यम और नियम का यूज किया. Furthermore, in the recent time, there is a very much broad consciousness emerging that the other part of yoga have been, researched a lot. हमने आसन प्राणायाम को research किया, हमने spiritual aspect को research किया. But the most neglected part of Yoga Darshan or Patanjali Yoga Darshan or Ashtanga Yoga Patanjali Yoga Darshan is the moral aspect. So I just want to put this question, whether the yam and niyam, the interpretation of yam and niyam would remain the same as it was in the earlier time, or would we have something modern in the contemporary time? Can we build up a new theory by following the yam and niyam, or will we remain in the same context? Now coming to the asana and pranayam. Nowadays, we all try to focus on the psychological, or we do a sort of medicalization of asana and pranayam. Lots of research have been going on, lots of presentation would be going on after me, lots of AIMS doctor, and am I audible to everyone?
Now we are audible. Now we are audible.
Yes,
Oh, thank you so much. So where I was saying that lots of medical interpretation or medicalization have been done on the asanas and pranayama. So like personally, I also oppose this thing, like we should not do the medicalization, we should not put the medical gaze on the asana pranayama. But it is a modern interpretation. That's what we all are doing. We all are practicing. So we cannot oppose this thing. So Hegel would say, whether you follow the ancient notion or in the modern notion, you are historically, following the things. And this thing is very much essential to know. Hegel also accepted this thing, like whatever you are going to follow, ultimately you will reach the absolute. So whether we are, doing asana and pranayama in the modern sense or in the ancient, we all will lead to the ultimate goal that may be considered as absolute or moksha or apvarga and so on. So this thing is very much essential to contemplate. And now I may conclude my thesis with that. Similarly, Aurobindo ji also proclaimed the thesis that whether follow any sort of path, or whether you follow the yoga or not, everyone will reach the Satchid and Anand. Like you will reach the Satchid and Anand sooner or later. However, the process of yoga may help you to reach that goal faster. So this is also the framework under which I try to put the philosophy of yoga. Like when we are historically conditioned, when culture basically influence the whole process, will the interpretation of yoga be remain the same, or can we have a refresh and modern interpretation? Can we progress, or can we address new problems or new researches in the Patanjali Yoga Darshan, or will we do the same literal interpretation of the Patanjali Yoga Darshan? When I try to put the hermeneutical method in it, there are four things. One is literal, second is analogical, moral, and allegorical. So most of the time when we try to interpret the Patanjali Yoga Darshan, we follow the literal method. We try to interpret the Patanjali Yoga Darshan literally. Like, we do not try to take any sort of risk. However, we may transcend this methodology, and we may move forward and may interpret Patanjali Yoga Darshan with another point of view, from moral perspective, from analogical point of view, as well as from allegorical point of view. So this thing may helps us to interpret the fresh interpretation of Patanjali Yoga Darshan, and this is the thing. Thank you. Thank you, sir. I have concluded my thesis, sir. Thank you so much.
You done?
Yeah, thank you, sir.
Okay, then thank you for your nice presentation. Next we have Dr. D. Pramod. So are you there? Can you hear me? You're not audible, so Dr.
Yeah,
Pramod.
it's okay, Sonu?
Now you're audible. So go ahead, make your presentation. Yeah. Okay, so you will be making your presentation on thought processing unit,
Yes.
mind,
Yes.
and you have total 10 minutes.
Yeah, just wait. I'm just upload.
Yeah.
Upload.
Okay.
Right, sir. Can you just wait 2 minutes, sir? I'm just unable to upload it actually. Sir,
Sir, I think you can make your presentation without using
ये मैं ना-
the screen.
Can you upload this one? Which was upload చేస్తా స్క్రీన్ ఓపెన్ చేశారు అప్లోడ్ కావడం లేదు అది పీపీటీ అప్లోడ్ చేయాలి అబ్బా
He is audible.
యాక్సెస్ ఇచ్చారు ఇచ్చారు
He is trying to share the screen, I think.
Why don't you move to the next session? In the meantime, he will fix it up.
I think you're not even updated, sir. You're not even access to me, sir. It's not sharing. I think phone check. చెప్పండి కదా అప్పటి నుంచి.
Rahul sir, why don't you move to the next session? In the meantime, he will fix this problem.
So, Dr. Pramod, we are moving to next speaker. Meanwhile, you can make your screen working, right? So, next we have Dr. Mahesh Sharma, Assistant Professor, Department of Philosophy, Jagadguru Ramanandachar, Rajasthan Sanskrit University, Jaipur, and he will be speaking on Sankhya और योग का समान संबंध.
नमस्कार, मम ध्वनिः श्रूयते न वा तत्र? मौर्य जी, मेरी आवाज आ रही है?
आम् सम्यक् रूपेण श्रूयते.
सर्वेभ्यो नमस्कारः. सीतानाथ समारंभां रामानन्दार्य मध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्य पर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरु परम्पराम्. अधिमञ्चं विराजमानाः मान्याः डीएन श्रद्धेयाः पूज्याः डीएन तिवारी वर्याः, महतः प्रमोदस्य स्थानमिदं यदत्य सांख्य योगयोः सम्बन्धं विषयीकृत्य इयं संगोष्ठी अत्र वाराणस्यां समायोज्यते. जयपुरतः अहं सर्वेभ्यः नमस्कारान् वितीर्य किंचित वच्मि. सब लोग अंग्रेजी में बोल रहे हैं. ये शायद प्रमोद जी का मैं बोल सकता हूँ ना. प्रमोद जी का कुछ शेयरिंग वाला आ रहा है बीच में. मौर्य जी एक बार थोड़ा देखिएगा प्लीज. हाँ, थैंक यू. मैं बिल्कुल योगानुशासन से चलूंगा, और योगानुशासन में समय बहुत बड़ी चीज है. मैं समझता हूँ बहुत लोगों को बोलना है, मुझे कुछ अधिक नहीं कहना है. सारी बात बड़े बड़े विद्वान कह चुके हैं. मैं 2-3 बातें अपनी कह के, जो अब तक नहीं कही गई है, उन बातों को कह करके बिल्कुल मौन हो जाऊंगा. वैदिक सनातन धर्म में सांख्य और योग दर्शन एक जोड़े के रूप में प्रचलित है, और शास्त्रों में इन दोनों दर्शनों के उपलब्ध आरंभिक सूत्र वास्तव में इन दोनों के समान संबंध को प्रकट करते हैं. उपनिषदों में, महाभारत में, और मुख्यतः है गीता में, और गीता के बाद पौराणिक साहित्य में सांख्य और योग, इन दोनों शब्दों का प्रायः उल्लेख एक साथ हुआ है. और महाभारत का एक प्रसिद्ध कथन है कि सांख्य योग का जो फल है वह अत्यंत कल्याणकारी है. और इसलिए निर्विवाद रूप से यह बात है कि सभी ग्रंथों में उनका पारस्परिक संबंध समान ही रहा है. और इस संबंध को अलग अलग बताने का काम उद्घाटन सत्र में प्रोफेसर दीनानाथ जी ने किया था. वो बहुत चिंतनीय विषय है, बहुत जबरदस्त उनका व्याख्यान था. यद्यपि सांख्य ने विश्व विकास के विभिन्न रूपों के संबंध में विवेचन करने वाले सभी ग्रंथों को प्रभावित किया है, किंतु मैं कहना चाहता हूं, यह भी बहुत बड़ा दुखद आश्चर्य है कि सांख्य को भारत में उतना सम्मान एवं आदर प्राप्त नहीं हो सका था, और कदाचित अभी नहीं है जितना योग को मिला अथवा अब भी मिल रहा है. हम सभी लोग जानते हैं कि सांख्य के उद्गम की समस्या, सांख्य का उद्गम कब हुआ, कहाँ हुआ, किस ग्रंथ में सर्वप्रथम हुआ, इस समस्या पर विचार करना भारतीय दर्शन की कठिनतम समस्याओं में एक है. और इसका उल्लेख पुरातन ग्रंथों में पंच शिखाचार्य के नाम से प्रसिद्ध वह वाक्य है, एकमेव दर्शनम सांख्यमेव दर्शनम. हम सभी लोग जानते हैं कि महर्षि कपिल के द्वारा विरचित सांख्य सूत्र इस दर्शन के आधार हैं, और सांख्य सिद्धांत पर बहुत से ग्रंथ और निबंध लिखे गए हैं. पर हम लोगों को यह जानना चाहिए कि वह आरंभिक सांख्य शिक्षा क्या थी जिसे ईश्वर कृष्णाचार्य ने सांख्य कारिका में सुधारा. इस विषय में सामान्य रूप से स्वीकृत कोई सम्मति आज तक नहीं बन पाई है, और ईश्वर कृष्ण के द्वारा की हुई सांख्य कारिकाओं पर भी अपने आप में बहुत सारी टीकाएं हैं. उन टीकाओं में अत्यंत आरंभिक टीका संभवतः परमार्थ द्वारा किए अनुवाद के रूप में है, जो 1546 ईस्वी में चीनी भाषा में सबसे पहले प्रकाशित हुई थी, और इसका संस्कृत रूपांतरण पंडित अय्या स्वामी शास्त्री द्वारा किया गया था. सांख्य कारिका की माठराचार्य की टीका माठर वृत्ति को 450 ईस्वी के उपरांत नहीं रखा जा सकता, और ईश्वर कृष्ण को 250 ईस्वी के पश्चात का नहीं मान सकते. दर्शन, भारतीय दर्शन के बड़े अध्येता प्रोफेसर A.B. कीथ ने अपनी प्रसिद्ध पुस्तक सांख्य सिस्टम्स में कहा है कि ईश्वर कृष्ण 325 ईस्वी के पश्चात नहीं रखे जा सकते। मैं बहुत संकोच के साथ इस बात को कहना चाहता हूं कि यह बात मानी जा सकती है कि बुद्धिज्म और जैनिज्म के बाद सांख्य के ग्रंथों का प्रणयन हुआ, जिनको आज की तारीख में सांख्य दर्शन के तहत पढ़ाया जा रहा है। और बुद्धिज्म और जैनिज्म के पुराना जो सांख्य है, जो गीता में, महाभारत में वर्णित है, इस सांख्य को निरीश्वर और शेश्वर, इन दो द्वंद्व के बीच में जिस तरह से एक नई तरीके की बात शेश्वर सांख्य, निरीश्वर सांख्य के हम सभी लोग चर्चा करते हैं, गुरुजन चर्चा करते हैं। लेकिन गीता का जो सांख्य है, देखिए SN दास गुप्त की हिस्ट्री ऑफ इंडियन फिलोसफी जो 1922 में, आज से 100 साल पहले छपी, उसके प्रथम भाग के अंदर प्रोफेसर डॉक्टर SN दास गुप्त ने सांख्य योग को बिल्कुल अलग अलग नहीं लिखा, एक साथ लिखा। 100 वर्ष पहले तक SN दास गुप्त ने, कैम्ब्रिज से वो बुक छपी, सांख्य योग को साथ साथ लिख रहे हैं। इधर गीता के कथन की सुबह से इस वाक्य को सैकड़ों बार दोहराया जा चुका है, सांख्य योगो पृथक बालाः प्रवदन्ति न पंडिताः यत् सांख्ये प्राप्यते योगम तद योगैरपि गम्यते। गीता का कथन है, हम सभी लोग जानते हैं कि अज्ञानी लोग ही सांख्य एवं योग को भिन्न मानते हैं, किंतु जो इनमें से किसी एक का आश्रय ले लेता है वह दोनों द्वारा उद्घाटित फल की प्राप्ति करता है, और जो दोनों को समझता है वह सत्यावलोकन करता है। महर्षि पतंजलि के लिखे योग सूत्रों ने कहीं भी विश्व के विकास की योजना पर स्पष्ट रूप से कोई प्रकाश नहीं डाला है। हम चाहे पूरे उनके जो 200 के करीब सूत्र उनको देख लें, किंतु इसमें इतनी पर्याप्त सामग्री जरूर है योग दर्शन में, जिसके आधार पर यह कहा जा सकता है कि यह सांख्य पद्धति के कुछ सिद्धांतों को स्वीकार करता है, भले वो प्रकृति का सिद्धांत हो, तत्व, सत्व, रज, तम नामक 3 गुण हो, उनकी विशेषताएं हो, आत्मा का स्वरूप हो, कैवल्य हो, मुक्ति में आत्मा की स्थिति कैसी है, वैसी बातें, सांख्य की बातें योग सूत्र में के कुछ निर्देशों से भी स्थापित की जा सकती है। योग सूत्र में इंद्रियों के निरोध से उत्पन्न हुए फलों का उल्लेख किया है, जिनमें एक है प्रधान जय। मैं ध्यानाकर्षण चाहता हूं आप पर। योग सूत्र ने इंद्रियों के निरोध से उत्पन्न फलों का उल्लेख किया है, जिनमें एक है प्रधान जय, विश्व के प्रथम कारण, प्रधान को जीतना, जिसे सांख्य ने भी कहा है। योग सूत्र ने कहीं भी प्रकृति एवं इसके विकास या उद्भव की चर्चा नहीं की है, अतः माना जा सकता है कि सांख्य ने प्रकृति के विषय में जो कहा है, योग उसे जो का त्यों स्वीकार कर लेता है। अब थोड़ा सा यह इस तरह से है कि योग ने सांख्य के कुछ सिद्धांत, कुछ मौलिक सिद्धांतों को, यद्यपि ये मौलिक शब्द का प्रयोग में हम लोग करते नहीं है, क्योंकि हमारे यहाँ मौलिक होते ही जैन और बौद्ध होने की संभावना है। हमारे यहाँ तो सब वैदिक सिद्धांत से ही अनुप्राणित है, इसलिए ये जो बार बार कहा जाता है और वक्ता लोग कहते हैं कि उनका मौलिक सिद्धांत है, मौलिक सिद्धांत है, मौलिक सिद्धांत तो होना ही अवैदिक होना है। तो योग ने सांख्य के जो सिद्धांतों को स्वीकार कर लिया, उन दोनों में कुछ अंतर भी है। सांख्य में ईश्वर को स्थान प्राप्त नहीं के बराबर है, किंतु योग के समाधि भाग में हम सभी लोग इस सूत्र की सुबह से चर्चा कर रहे हैं, ईश्वर प्रणिधान अथवा ईश्वर के अस्तित्व की बात पाई जाती है। यद्यपि यह केवल गौण रूप में ही प्रतिष्ठापित है, जिसको बहुत कई बार अति श्रद्धा और अति उत्साह में बहुत अत्यधिक विवेचन कर दिया जाता है, और संभवतः यह केवल सर्वसाधारण के विश्वास पर ही आधारित है, क्योंकि योग सूत्र ने कहीं भी स्पष्ट रूप से यह नहीं कहा है कि ईश्वर विश्व का स्रष्टा है। वह जो कुछ कहता है वह यह है कि उसमें सर्वोच्च सर्वज्ञता पाई जाती है, वह आदि ऋषियों का आचार्य है, और ओंकार के जप, प्रणव के जप एवं उस पर ध्यान लगाने से योगी आत्मा के सत्य स्वरूप का ज्ञान प्राप्त कर सकता है। वास्तव में सांख्य एवं योग दोनों में परमार्थ है, कैवल्य है, किंतु सांख्य सम्यक ज्ञान के अतिरिक्त किसी अन्य अनुशासन की व्यवस्था कैवल्य के लिए नहीं करता। वास्तव में सांख्य एक आध्यात्मिक एवं बौद्धिक, किंतु योग ने आध्यात्मिक एवं बौद्धिक दर्शन है सांख्य, किंतु योग ने इस आध्यात्मिकता एवं बुद्धिमत्ता के साथ इस विषय में एक विशद मानस अनुशासन की व्यवस्था भी की है। केवल ज्ञान की अपेक्षा अभ्यास एवं प्रयास को अधिक महत्व एवं प्रधानता दी है, तथा प्राणायाम एवं ध्यान पर विशेष बल दिया है। हम सभी लोग जानते हैं कि सांख्य ने आत्मा के उद्धार एवं जन्म से छुटकारा, मुक्ति पाने के लिए पुरुष एवं प्रकृति एवं दोनों के अंतर को भलीभांति समझ लेने को पर्याप्त माना है, किंतु योग केवल इस दार्शनिक सरल मानसिक स्थिति तक पहुंच जाने पर ही संतोष नहीं करता, वह इच्छा एवं संवेगों के क्रमबद्ध प्रशिक्षण एवं संयमन पर बल देता है। सांख्य एवं योग दोनों में प्रत्येक आत्मा नित्य है, व्यक्ति की नियति है प्रकृति एवं उसके विभिन्न स्वरूपों से मुक्ति पाना तथा सदैव वही स्वरूप में बने रहना। यही पर सांख्य और योग शंकराचार्य के अद्वैत और भगवान रामानुजाचार्य के विशिष्टाद्वैत से पृथक है, क्योंकि आचार्य शंकर के वेदांता अद्वैत मतानुसार आत्मा की अंतिम नियति है मतलब ब्रह्मात्मैक्य बोध, ब्रह्मात्मैक्य हो जाना, उसमें निमग्न हो जाना, ब्रह्म में समाहित तो मैं नहीं कहूंगा। और भगवान रामानुजाचार्य के यहाँ परम पुरुषोत्तम भगवान श्रीमन नारायण जो चित अचित विशिष्ट है, जो श्रीभू नीला नायक है, सत्य काम सत्य संकल्प है, उन ईश्वर की भक्ति को प्राप्त कर लेना, यह भगवान रामानुजाचार्य का।
Dr. Mahesh, you have already taken your time, so kindly conclude.
बस आई एम कंक्लूडिंग सर, और मैं बस लास्ट 2 बात कह रहा हूँ। विज्ञान भिक्षु ने लगभग 1550 ईस्वी में सांख्य प्रवचन सूत्र पर एक भाष्य लिखा। विज्ञान भिक्षु ने यह असंभव मान्यता स्थापित करने का प्रयास किया कि सांख्य सिद्धांत की बातें ईश्वरवादी सिद्धांत या अद्वैत सिद्धांत के विरोध में बिल्कुल नहीं जाती है। इसलिए यह माना जा सकता है कि सांख्य और योग इन दोनों के जिस संबंध की चर्चा अब सभी लोग कर रहे हैं, वास्तव में यह चर्चा बहुत महत्वपूर्ण है। और इस आयोजन के लिए मैं दर्शन विभाग, बनारस हिंदू विश्वविद्यालय और विशेषकर श्रुति मिश्रा जी को धन्यवाद देता हूँ। नमस्कार।
Thank you, Dr. Mahesh, for your. Okay, so we would like to thank you from our convener of this program, Dr. Shruti Mishra ji. She is also extending her thankfulness to your presentation.
Sir, now I can speak, sir.
Yes, Dr. Pramod, now you can go ahead and make your presentation. You are audible.
Stop me. It's just uploading, sir. Are you able to see, sir?
Yes, we can see it.
Thank you, sir, for the technical problems from here. And I'm Dr. Pramod from Malad University. I did MSc and PhD. I'm basically a man of physics. I have joined in the metaphysics science. I'm writing on Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam activities and published a lot of papers. So I got an idea when you're talking about Sankhya philosophy, and Dr. Anand Mishra has given a time, Pramod, you can speak at 10 minutes time. You can go on the thought processing unit. So basically, we are the most fortunate people in the world and among the living entities. There are 84 lakhs of living entities, and we're the most fortunate as well intelligent and most conscious. Intelligent can be used for the constructive purpose or destructive purpose. It depends upon intelligence where we can use it. Okay, whether they can go for a destructive or constructive purpose. The human body is trapped in the material world. We are in the material world actually. And so many problems we have, it has become very difficult to come out from the material world. It does not mean that we are intelligent, we can do anything, and it does not mean we can conquer and kill other living entities. The human form is the best platform in this materialistic world to go to higher planets. And there are so many janmas, the birth and death continues, and we reach it up to the human form. This human form should be utilized properly to go to higher levels. Otherwise, we are useless. The highest goal of human life is to reside in the vicinity of the Supreme Lord. That is the final goal of aim of all human beings. Now, thought processing unit. This can be achieved by proper dedication and devotional service to the proper yoga system. Otherwise, the birth and death cycle continues. We have got a form. We have to use it by yoga system and other devotional activities. We can do it. We can go to higher levels. To escape from the material world, one must control the attributes of the human body. Okay, a human body consists of senses, mind. That I'm going to discuss details. The human body is entangled with the 28 attributes. The mind controls and coordinates with all attributes called thought processing units. Okay, what are these? I'm going to discuss. It's a complex, but analysis systematically and take the decision depending on the external internal conditions at the time of feeding the inputs. Okay, thought processing unit, the whole body consists of 28 parameters. Whatever the inputs goes, that analyzes and process it and go to the output form. That's what I'm going to display. Now, the thought processing unit is a subject, sorry, I'm talking metaphysics. Metaphysics is a subject which deals about the science, society, and interaction between the interrelation between the science and society. It deals about objects behind the physical objects. Some things we cannot see, but still we can imagine them. It talks about existence, non-existence. It talks about the topics where science ends. The main questions: who am I? Why am I here? What is my purpose? Who had sent me here? Why did I come here? Where do we go from here? These are the complications of people did it in the past. We also do it, future also do it, but things are unanswerable. This can be achieved by analyzing the systematically of Vedic scriptures. And you may not find the Western literature, but we can find only Vedic scriptures, Hindu scriptures, we can identify these things. Now, what are the attributes? The attributes, you have the cosmic elements, Panchabhutas, we know there are 5. Working senses, Karmendriyas, we call it in Sanskrit, there are 5. Knowledgeable senses, you have the Gnanendriyas, 5. Objects, knowledgeable senses, Tattvas, that can touch, view, see, and all these things, 5. Mind, Manas. False ego, that's the Ankar. Intelligence, Buddhi, we call it in Sanskrit. Soul, Atma, another Paramatma. And modes of nature are 3. So these 28 parameters are called attributes. The human body is combination of all these things. This is called thought processing unit. Now, we have the modes of nature. There are 3 modes of nature we have it. Mode of goodness, that's Sattva Guna. Mode of passion, Rajoguna. Mode of ignorance, Guna. These are most complicated things, and wherever you go, we find these things. These are available in the human body also. Up to neck, Sattva Guna. Middle abdominal is the passion. Then after that, Tamo Guna. Then you have a time also. Till morning up to 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, Sattva Guna. 9 to 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock, you go to passion, Rajoguna. Then after 6 o'clock, to Tamo Guna. Whole world is divided into the modes of nature. Actually. Then food also. It also depends upon whatever the food you are taking. You're taking vegetarian food, non-vegetarian food, sattvic food, non-sattvic food. All depends upon your ideas. Your process depends upon whatever the inputs you are giving to the body. And weather also important. Whether talking about which conditions we can. We are speaking India, speaking Himalayas, speaking hot conditions, weather also important. So sattvic food, sattvic nature, sattvic association will make you Suddha Sattvic. Suddha Sattvic is the gateway to spiritual planets, and it's very, very difficult to reach up to the place. We have to do a lot of yoga systems, spiritual activities, and then only we'll be able to reach. Then, Navadvars, the entry and exit doors of the material energy to the human body are through your eyes to, nostrils to, ears to, mouth, arms, genitals. Human body is a field or a place of kshetram of 9 gates. It's well defined in the Bhagavad Gita. These 9 gates are called a Navadvar. The material energy enter and exit from the human body are through the 9 gates. Now, these are attributes. This human body is entangled, it trapped in all these things. This is what I want to tell you. Panchabhutas, we have it. Then you have the Gnanendriyas, eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and skin. Karmendriyas, you have a tongue, legs, hands, this. Then object of senses. You have the see, sound, smell, speech, and speech, and one. So through this, you can touch them. You can sensation will come from this. Then you have the modes. One is Sattva Guna, Rajoguna, and Tamo Guna. Then another 3 things: mind, false ego, and intelligence. These 3 are the different one. Because of these 3, we are different in the world actually. And what we are in here may be different in America. What we are in different, Himalayas different, because the ego and intelligence matters. Then another thing is the soul and super soul. We know all these things, we are expert. Soul is the basic register, is the representative, and our records will be written, it will carry our information to the next birth. Super soul is the Lord is sitting with us, and he will observe what we are doing it. And we can discuss with him, with the in and out, whether can decisions, we can discuss super soul. Then this is a block box, blood diagram I made it. thought processing unit. These are the inputs. Whenever the thought processing unit is there, mind is there, inputs are coming, number of inputs are coming, and mind will analyze it with 28 parameters. Then it analyzes whether this activity is a spiritualism or materialism. There are only two sciences we have. One is the material science and spiritual science. Material science deals with the experiments, whereas spiritual science the experience. Okay. Then after that, once analyze it, it will go to them again TPU, then analyze it. From that, you get 6 decisions. That is, agree or reject, whether you want to sign it or don't sign it, whether you want the money or don't want, accept or reject, agree and reject. Then desire and hatred. I want this, what my desire, what is my hatred, that's the one thing. Another one here, the pleasure and pain. If you do any activity, what is my pleasure? What is my pain I'm getting? So these 6 activities are the arrows, one after analysis. And from this one, you take only one decision. I want to accept, I want to appoint one. Whether appoint or not, my body will analyze it. Then I will take a decision, then apply, then appointed, not appointed. The judgment, any one of it. So this is a thought processing unit. The basic idea just discussed. I am planning to work it in a mathematical model also. Then TPU acts very fast by coordination with all attributes. It's very fast. And all the attributes analyzed in a quick succession to separate them into 2 types, material and spiritual. The intelligence, mind and false ego play critical role in taking 6 appropriate decisions. What are these? Again repeating. Agree, disagree, desire and hatred, pleasure and pain. These like arrows. And it will shoot them and opposite person will move in the direction. It may affect you, it may affect the opposite person also. Here, mind plays the politics, but the body get the punishments. Body does not do it, but mind make the gains and body will get the punishment. Now, yoga. India is the resource center of spirituality in the world. Yoga system was developed by our ancestors thousands of years back. Yoga, which is a union of body, mind, and soul. The difference of yoga systems are well elaborated in Bhagavad Gita, Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga. It helps to take appropriate decisions under stressful conditions. Yoga helps for the self as well as the society. Yoga talks about a materialism, spiritualism. The practicing of yoga keep the body fit and health. If the body is healthy, fit, then you can do other things. You can do education and everything. The health is not.
Sir, I'm really sorry to interrupt you. You have already taken your time.
Yeah.
Kindly.
And disease of the mind depends upon the type of food taking, type of living, environment. Conclusion: humans are the most fortunate. Humans form platform can be used properly to go to higher levels. If you do not use it, you are fuller than the foolish. Mind is flickering, unsteady, and always busy working with inputs of sensory objects. No one is idle in this world. Everyone is working in this world. If not physically, they may be working mentally. Now, your yoga system is control the mind and body. One who controls the mind is called Goswami, as per Bhagavad Gita. One who is controlled by the senses is called a Gotsa, servant of senses. Sattvic would already explain. That would be the gateway to liberation, where the birth and death cycle does not take place. This is the prime goal of all living entities. Then, Vidya Vinay Sampanne, Brahmane, Javyastini, Shinichaiva Swake Cha Pandita Samadashna. The humble sage, by virtue of a true knowledge, sees the equal vision: a learned man, a gentle Brahmin, a cow, elephant, and dog eater. He is called a real teacher and a real yogi. He sees all the persons uniform. And references have got this one. And dedication and devotion are 2 successful parameters to reach the Supreme God. And these are my activities: metaphysics, I work on karma, Vedic science, and super soul, Bhagavad Gita, all this published nearly 40 research, national, international research papers. Thank you, sir, for giving the opportunity. Okay. And,
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, sir, for your really thought-provoking presentation. Now we have our next speaker, Florence Mins. He is a research scholar from our Department of Philosophy and Religion, Banaras Hindu University. He will be making his presentation on Ishwar Pranidhan, a theistic means of yoga in Seswar Sankhya. Is he there, Florence
Yeah,
Mins?
yeah,
Yes.
yes, I'm
Now
here.
go
Yes.
ahead. And you have total 8 to 10 minutes, right?
Okay, yeah, thank you very much. Am I audible enough?
Yes, you are audible. Go ahead.
Respected chairperson, respected all my teachers, organizers, participants, and very good evening to all of you. And first of all, I like to express my sincere thanks to the HOD and the department. I also acknowledge sincere gratitude to Dr. Shruti Mishra, my supervisor, who in fact encouraged me to do at least to take up this task. So I have nothing much to contribute. All things have been said already. However, it is out of my interest that I like to present a topic, and the topic name is Ishwara Pranidhana, a theistic means of yoga in Seshwara Sankhya. So this is the topic that I have, and while talking about this, just I casually think when I talk about Seshwara Sankhya, what are the literatures we have? Where do we have the sources? So thinking of this, I have a very short presentation. The sage Patanjali defines yoga as Yoga Sita Buddhi Nirodha. In this, he has explained all this in Ashtanga Yoga. And in this Ashtanga Yoga, we have two parts, that is Yama and Niyama. This explains the ethical portion of the Ashtanga Marga. And in this Niyama, we have the Saucha, Santosa, Tapa, Swadhyaya, Ishwara Pranidhana Niyama. In this, we have this called 5. And the last one is that Ishwara Pranidhana. Here we find a very distinctive presentation of understanding of God. Although we have some in Tapa, at the same time Swadhyaya. But this is the main point that I like to inquire. And while going through this Patanjali Yoga Darshana, it is a technique that aims controlling and purifying 3 lower vehicles of human, they say, the body, the mind, and the spiritual self. So it is said that the body, the mind, that which corresponds to the tapa and swadhyaya, which human body has some control. We have some control over it. But on the spiritual self, that is called the Ishwara Pranidhana, we do not have any control, because it goes beyond the physical body. Therefore, this has to be only related to the devotion of God or Ishwara Pranidhana. That is how I find that Ishwara Pranidhana is one of the places we find in yoga philosophy talking about God. And I found that in the Yoga Sutra, there are many places it is mentioned. That is Yoga Sutra number 1, 23, 124, then 2:1, 2:32, and 2:44 and 45. In these places, I just passing through, I read through, and I read the commentary of Vyasa and Vachaspati. Although partially I have read of Vijnana Vikshu. So from this, what I found is that they have explained step by step the understanding of Ishwara Pranidhana. But we find that first one, 123 of Yoga Sutra, that speaks about Ishwara Pranidhanatva. It is said that, or by feeling the omnipresence of God. Here, in fact, Vyasa and Vachaspati are explaining that how a person who is following the path of Ishwara Pranidhana, how speedily can reach to Samadhi. They think that it is something like an alternative path that is leading to Samadhi. At the same time, the person who follows this path, Ishwara Pranidhana, gains some type of benefit without working for it. And when we read in 124 Yoga Sutra, we find this Ishwara Pranidhana has been explained as the Purusha Ishwara, Purusha Vishesha Ishwara, where we find the distinction that this Purusha is a distinct Purusha, and they have tried to differentiate, telling that this Ishwara is untouched by the vehicles of afflictions, actions, or fruition. And also they try to differentiate that this Ishwara from the Sankhya Purusha, that this Ishwara of Ishwara Pranidhana is totally unfettered, untouched by any of the including evolution, whereas the Purusha of Sankhya system, we find that this could be a liberated Purusha or called as Mukta Purusha. So in this way, we find the overall development that I found here, that this Ishvara Pranidhana also talks about that Ishvara where we go giving our devotion and making him the motive of all actions. And also further we read in 232 Yoga Sutra that this Ishvara Pranidhanas, where it is said that Ishvara is the motive of that great teacher. Here we find that this great teacher, great guru, who is able to remove our sins, karma, and demerits. Therefore, we are able to go ahead in attaining samadhi. Thereafter, we have many more references, like we have again Sadhana Pada 45 and 44. There we read that through the path of Ishvara Pranidhana, it is a kind of samadhi that makes perfect our sadhana, through which we are able to reach our aim, the aim of called yoga. And this is how I find that. And later on, what I found is that Sankhya and Yoga as allied system, we find Sankhya is more of an atheist, whereas Yoga is considered as the theist part. In all this, there are lots of argument, but what I found is that Yoga has tried to give a theistic version and given few arguments. So these were the way I found that yoga philosophy gives about the theistic understanding of God. And I have some observations. Observations are like, by the very fact, Seshwara Sankhya, where Patanjali brings a new understanding of Sankhya yoga system. By bringing new understanding of yoga and Sankhya system, he in fact relates his view with the earlier views. Like, yeah.
Yeah, I think you have taken your time, so kindly conclude, huh?
Okay, so the last concluding point is that he integrates from Sankhya, we call yoga, at the same time Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, and Karma Yoga. At the same time, he makes this Sankhya philosophy more acceptable. And lastly, what I found is that this called Seshwara Sankhya, I say, or Ishvara Paranidhana, I say, means it is certainly a sure path that is taking to the end, that is the Samadhi. And I find as an implication, it reminds us that we all need to feel the role of God in all our efforts, and especially in doing yoga. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Florence, for your interesting presentation. Uh, Next, we have Salini Arora. She is also a research scholar from the Department of Philosophy and Religion, Banaras Hindu University. She will be speaking on spiritual practices in Shankaracharya's Advaita as a derivative of Patanjali Yoga Sutra. Please.
Namaste to all. My topic is spiritual practices in Shankaracharya's Advaita as a derivative of Patanjali Yoga Sutra. Yoga in its totality has multiple aspects like philosophy, physical, and meditational techniques. However, in modern days, yoga is mostly limited to exercises for physical well-being, whereas its original connotation of meditation for spiritual well-being is missing. Maharshi Vyas, in his commentary on Yoga Sutra, explains the meaning of yoga as yoga samadhi, that is, equanimity of mind and intellect, indicating that yoga basically is a meditational technique for self realization. This aspect of yoga has been accepted extensively by all philosophical schools as a tool to attain Param Purusharth since ancient times, and Advaita is not an exception. Techniques used by different philosophical schools are apparently the same, while the philosophy behind them differs slightly due to the differences in the way they perceive the reality, which has resulted in unique, novel approaches and intention to perform these techniques. Understanding these differences is critical as intention plays the pivotal role in attaining the ultimate spiritual goal. It should not be taken as a criticism or basis to establish the superiority of any of the schools. In this paper, I'll make an attempt to gloss the philosophy of the two most ancient schools, namely the Advaita Vedanta and the Patanjali Yoga, analyze yoga from the Advaitic viewpoint, and then make a comparison of Patanjali Yoga with the Advaita Vedanta. Yoga also depicts the path to renunciation, can be divided into Gyan Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Karma Yoga, and Raj Yoga. Another aspect of yoga is its approach to reality, which has two main ways: Vivekaj Marg, the path of discrimination or distinction, and Yoga Marg, the path of integration or union. Patanjali Yoga and Shankar Vedant have adopted the Vivekaj Marg. Vivek means discrimination of Atman or self from the Maya, or in other words, as put by Yoga philosophy, it is the isolation of Purush from Prakriti. Advaita Vedanta is one of the ancient philosophical schools of Indian philosophy. Yoga has its root from very ancient time in this tradition and has been practiced and taught by many Advaita scholars. The main aim or goal of Advaita Vedanta is self-realization, the realization of the self that it is none other than Brahman itself. Advaita has three-step process of realization, which Shraman, Manan and Nididhyasana. While Shraman means listening to the words of Guru or reading the Veds, Manan means to understand or reflect upon what has been learned by Shraman. And the third step, Nididhyasana, involves dwelling in that truth all the time by meditating upon it. Yoga belongs to this third process in Advaita Vedantic tradition. Here, the term yoga depicts a meditational technique, the technique through which one leads to self-realization. Adi Shankaracharya, who has written many commentaries on several texts, has also commented upon the most celebrated work on yoga, the Patanjali Yoga Sutra. He is the second scholar after Vyas to write commentary on this work. Shankaracharya, in his work Aprokshanubhuti, has given 15 steps to self-realization. These 15 steps are the meditational technique through which one can attain the highest knowledge. The 15 steps stated by Shankaracharya in Aprokshanubhuti are Yam, Niyam, Tyag, Maunam, Desh, Kal, Asan, Moolabandh, Deh Samya, Driksthiti, Pranayam, Pratyahar, Dharan, Dhyan and Samadhi. The terms are taken from the different sections of yoga and 8 of them directly taken from the Patanjali Yoga. These steps are to be followed and practiced for a long period of time by those who want to attain the ultimate goal of life. Comparison with Patanjali's Ashtanga Yoga. Though Shankaracharya has taken terms from the Ashtanga Yoga mentioned in the Patanjali Yoga Sutra, he has explained them from the Advaitic point of view. Here, a brief comparison is done between these two, and the similarities and differences are stated for the better understanding of the realization between the two. Similarities. The first similarities is of the names or the terms used. Second is of the objective. Now coming to the differences, the first difference is of the number of steps. Second is the meaning of the similar terms. And the third difference is of the philosophical approach. The last difference is of the final result. The final result, that is Samadhi, in Patanjali Yoga is the absorption of all the vrittis, that is all the thoughts. In Shankaracharya Yoga, Samadhi is the establishment of only one thought, that is I am Brahman. It is the self-realization, the state of ultimate knowledge, Aham Brahmasmi. As a conclusion, I will state that Yoga in Advaita Vedanta can be called as the merge of the Raj Yoga with Gyan Yoga. The steps of Raj Yoga have been explained by Shankaracharya in the light of knowledge of non-dualism. The explanation of the term of Patanjali Yoga is done differently by Shankaracharya, not to criticize or contradict the former, but to establish the Advaitic knowledge in each step of the practice. If seen from the larger perspective, these explanations can be helpful to understand the depth of some of the steps of Patanjali Yoga. As in the case of pranayam, the technique is not just to control the breath, but also to control the thoughts in the mind with each breath. Also, the additional steps can further explain the techniques and work as a connecting link to the next step of the 8 limbs. For example, the addition of Desh and Kal before Asan can act as a helping link for the yogi to understand the importance of place and time in meditation. The yogi can take the benefit of the suitable time and place by understanding about the phases of the day which have higher spiritual vibration and places suitable for meditation. Yoga is a technique which needs persistent practice, whether it is the one given by Patanjali or Shankaracharya. Therefore, the 15 steps stated above need to be practiced by the aspirant of the truth for a long period of time to establish himself in that knowledge. Once the yogi succeeds in this, he attains samadhi, which is the highest knowledge. Thank you.
Thank you, Shalini, for making your presentation. Next, we have Ashwathi S. He is also a research scholar from Sri Shankaracharya University of Sanskrit, Kaladi, Kerala. She will be speaking on Yog Darsane Moksha Sankalpa. So, Ashwathi, are you there?
Yes.
Okay, so go ahead and make your presentation.
Okay.
You have total 8 minutes, right?
Okay. सर्वेषां नमस्कारः। मम विषयः योगदर्शने मोक्षसङ्कल्पः। योगेन चित्तस्य पदेन वाचा मलं शरीरस्य च वैद्येन यो अभागरोत्तं प्रवरं मुनिना पतञ्जलिं प्राञ्जलिरानतोऽस्मि। युज समाधौ इति धातोर्योगः समाधिः। योगदर्शनस्य प्रणेता पतञ्जलमहर्षिः। साङ्ख्योक्त पञ्चविंशतितत्त्वैः सह ईश्वरस्य गणना अधिकतया कृतः इत्यतः सेश्वरसाङ्ख्यम् इत्यपि कथ्यते। अतः तयोः समानतन्त्रत्वं कल्पितम्। साङ्ख्यदर्शने ये सिद्धान्ताः प्रतिपादिताः तेषां प्रयोगः भवति योगः। योगदर्शने ईश्वरः क्लेशकर्मविभागाचैरपरामृष्टः पुरुषविशेषः भवति। विविधसाधना अभ्यासेन चित्तनियन्त्रणं कृत्वा कथं कैवल्यप्राप्तिः सिद्ध्यति इति योगदर्शनं विशदीक्रियते। यावन् मानवस्य मानसं विकाराकीर्णं भवति तावत् स आत्मज्ञानं न प्राप्नोति। अथ योगानुशासनम् इति सूत्रेण योगसूत्रम् आरभ्यते। योगश्चित्तवृत्तिनिरोधः इति सूत्रकारेण योगलक्षणम् उच्यते। वृत्तीनां निरोधः भवति योगः। चित्तवृत्तिनिरोधः मनसः एकाग्रतया भवेत्। चित्तस्य वृत्तेः क्लिष्टाक्लिष्टरूपेण पञ्चविधा भवति। वृत्तिनिरोधः अभ्यासवैराग्याभ्यां सम्पादनीयः। चित्तं सर्वदा परिणामभूतः। एकाग्रावस्थायां पुरुषः बाह्यविषयेषु विरक्तो भूत्वा आत्मस्वरूपे मनः स्थिररूपेण संस्थाप्य तिष्ठति चेत् कालान्तरे सकलवृत्तिनिरोधः जायते। चित्तस्य अन्तिमा अवस्था भवति समाधिः। सम्प्रज्ञातसमाधिः असम्प्रज्ञातसमाधिः चेत् समाधेः द्वैविध्यं कल्प्यते। सात्विकवृत्त्या सम्यक् प्रकर्षेण जातः साक्षात्कृतः समाधिः सम्प्रज्ञातसमाधिः इत्युच्यते। वितर्क विचार आनन्द अस्मिता च सम्प्रज्ञातसमाधेः धर्माः। विरामप्रत्यय अभ्यासपूर्वः संस्कारशेषो अन्यः इति असम्प्रज्ञातसमाधिलक्षणम्। यदा सर्वा अपि वृत्तेः प्रत्यस्ताः भवन्ति तदा चित्ते कश्चन संस्कारविशेषः जायते। स एव संस्कारशेषः असम्प्रज्ञातसमाधिः इति कथ्यते। सालम्बनाभ्यासः अस्य समाधेः सिद्धिर् असमर्थः। अदो सकलविषयहीनं परवैराग्यं पदार्थहीनत्वं सकलविषयशून्यत्वमेव तस्य साधने उपायः। अयमेव निर्बीजसमाधिः। असम्प्रज्ञातसमाधिः उपायप्रत्ययः भावप्रत्ययश्चेति द्विविधं भवति। तत्र उपायप्रत्ययः योगिनां भवति। भावप्रत्ययः विदेहानां प्रकृतिलीनानां च जायते। तपस्वाध्याय ईश्वर प्रणिधानानि क्रियायोगः इति उच्यते। द्वन्द्वसहिष्णुता तपः। परमपवित्र प्रणवादि मन्त्रजपः स्वाध्यायः। ईश्वराध्ययनं तस्मै स्वार्पणं च ईश्वरप्रणिधानानि। क्रियायोग अनुष्ठानेन क्लेशशैथिल्यं समाधिसाधनं च सम्भवति। क्लेशः कः इत्युक्ते अविद्या अस्मिता रागद्वेष अभिनिवेश इति पञ्चविधा क्लेशाः। अविद्यायाम् अस्मिता रागद्वेष अभिनिवेशाः उत्पद्यन्ते। अनित्येषु नित्यः, अशुचौ शुचिः, दुःखमये सुखानुभूतिः, अनात्मनि आत्मत्वं च अविद्यायाः स्वरूपः। एताः सर्वाः सूक्ष्मरूपेण चित्ते सन्ति। क्लेशस्य मूलकारणं कर्माशयः। रागद्वेषादि क्लेशनिदान्तः कर्मणा धर्माधर्मरूपः संस्कारः कर्माशयः। कर्माशय कारणात् जनन मरण पुनर्जन्मादयः सम्भवति। हेयहेतुनाशः पुरुषप्रकृतिसंयोगेन सम्भवति। पुरुषप्रकृतिसंयोगकारणः अविद्या। अविद्यानाशेन पुरुषः कैवल्यं सिद्ध्यति। तदुक्तं योगसूत्रे। स्वस्वामिशक्तेः स्वरूप उपलब्धिहेतुः संयोगः। तस्य हेतुरविद्या। तदभावाद् संयोगाभावो हानं तदृशोः कैवल्यम् इत्येवं योगोक्तं कैवल्यलक्षणम् उच्यते। विवेकख्यातिरविप्लवहानोपायः। अर्थात् संसारनाशस्य उपायः विवेकज्ञानः इति कैवल्यकारणत्वम्। मनसः पवित्रतार्थं सात्विकगुणप्राप्त्यर्थं च योगशास्त्रे अष्टाङ्गानि प्रतिपादितानि। योगाङ्गानुष्ठानात् अशुद्धिक्षये ज्ञानदीप्तिरा विवेकख्यातेः इत्युक्तम्। योगाङ्गानुष्ठानेन अशुद्धिक्षयात् योगिनः विवेकख्यातिः सम्पाद्यते। अष्टाङ्गानि उच्यते। यमनियमासन प्राणायाम प्रत्याहार धारण ध्यान समाधयोरष्टावङ्गानि। यमः नियमः आसनं प्राणायामः प्रत्याहारः धारण ध्यान समाधिः इति अष्टाङ्गानि। अहिंसा सत्यमस्तेय ब्रह्मचर्य अपरिग्रहाः यमाः। शौचसन्तोष तपः स्वाध्याय ईश्वर प्रणिधानानि नियमाः। स्थिरसुखमासनम्। श्वासप्रश्वासयोर्गतिविच्छेदः प्राणायामः। स्वविषयसम्प्रयोगे स्वरूपानुकार इवेन्द्रियाणां प्रत्याहारः। देशबन्धश्चित्तस्य धारणा। तत्र प्रत्येकदानता ध्यानं। तदेवार्थमात्रा निर्भासं स्वरूपशून्यमिव समाधिः। यमादि प्रत्याहार पर्यन्त अंगानि बहिरंगानि धारण ध्यान समाधेः अंतरंगानि इत्युच्यते अष्टांगानि यः निष्ठया पालयति सः योगिः योग साधनस्य अन्तिमं सोपानं भवति समाधिः जीवात्म परमात्मनोः साम्यावस्था समाधिः अष्टांग अनुष्ठानस्य अनन्तरमपि चित्तस्य परिणामं सम्भवति परिणामानन्तरं चित्तः असंप्रज्ञात अवस्था प्राप्यते औषधिभ्यः मन्त्रेभ्यः तपोभ्यः प्राप्तं सिद्धं प्राप्ताः अपि पुनः विषयमग्नाः भवन्ति ध्यानेन समाधिं प्राप्त्यस्तु न तथा पुनः विषयमग्नाः भवेयुः एतादृशयोगिनां कर्मं अशुक्लम् अकृष्णम् इति कथ्यते इन्द्रियाणि विषयसंयुक्तानि इच्छां जनयन्ति तथा च इन्द्रियाणां विषयैः संयोगे इच्छायाः नाशाभावात् इन्द्रियाणि विषयेभ्यः निवर्तयितव्यानि भवन्ति स्थूलस्वरूप सूक्ष्म अन्वय अर्थ संयमात् योगिनः पञ्चमहाभूतानाम् उपरि विजयते इत्यादि योगिनः पञ्चमहाभूतानाम् उपरि विजयं लब्ध्वा अष्टविभूतयः अथवा अष्टसिद्धिं प्राप्नोति अष्टविभूतयस्तु अणिमा लघिमा महिमा प्राप्तिः प्रागाम्यं वशित्वम् ईशित्वम् उत्पत्तिः च अनुसमान सूक्ष्मरूपता अणिमा लघुरूपता लघिमा पर्वत इव विशालरूपता महिमा मनो अभिलषणीय वस्तुनः प्राप्तिसामर्थ्यं प्राप्तिः त्रिविघ्नता प्रागाम्यं पञ्चभूतानां स्वायत्तीकरण सामर्थ्यं वशित्वं भौतिक पदार्थानाम् उत्पत्ति विनाश कारण सामर्थ्यम् उत्पत्तिः च इत्येवं योगिनः आत्मसाक्षात्कारः लभते अष्टविभूति सम्प्राप्त्यनन्तरं सर्वाणि लौकिक अलौकिक ऐश्वर्याणि आत्माधीनानि भवन्ति एवं विवेकख्यातिः जायते अत्र विवेकस्तु प्रकृतिपुरुषयोः अन्यथा ख्यातिः इत्यर्थः विवेकयोगिनः कृते सप्तप्राज्ञः लभ्यते हे संसारः क्लेशहीनता असंप्रज्ञात समाधिः विवेकख्यातिः अधिकारक्षेत्रं गुणानाम् आधारहीनता आत्ममुक्तिरिति सप्तप्राज्ञः विवेकी योगी तु अविद्यामुक्तो भवति सः रागादि क्लेशाभावे कर्माभावे च जन्माभावात् दुःखात् आत्यन्तिकमुक्तिः सिद्ध्यति विवेकज्ञानेन योगिनः सिद्धिं प्राप्नुवन्ति समाध्यवस्थायां योगिनाम् उत्पन्नं ज्ञानं धर्ममेकः इति कथ्यते धर्ममेकसमाधिः दोषशङ्कां दुःखं च निवारयति समाधिं प्राप्तमानं योगिनाम् एकस्मिन् क्षणेन सर्वं ज्ञानं जायते इदं तु योगदर्शनस्य परमं प्रयोजनम् इत्येवं कैवल्यं प्राप्यते योगसूत्रकारेण उक्तं पुरुषार्थशून्यानां गुणानां प्रतिप्रसवः कैवल्यस्वरूपप्रतिष्ठा वा चितिशक्तिरिति मानवाः मनसा सर्वदा विषयं निमग्नाः भवन्ति तादृशं मनः एकाग्रतया एकविषयीकृत्वा असंप्रज्ञातावस्था प्राप्नुवन्ति चेत् कैवल्यं सिद्ध्यति तत्त्वादि त्रिगुणानां परिणामः भवन्ति चित्तं चित्तस्थैर्यानुसारं साधनाः विचार्यन्ते मनसः वृत्तीनां नियन्त्रणेन साधना अनुष्ठानेन दुःखेभ्यः मोचनं प्राप्ते इति योगमतं तदर्थं यमनियमादि अष्टाङ्गमार्गाः पतञ्जलिना विशदीक्रियते समाध्यवस्थायामपि चित्तस्य परिणामः सम्भवति यदा विषयः तथा चित्तमिति सम्प्रज्ञातसमाध्यवस्थायां चित्तम् एकविषयीभूता भवति असम्प्रज्ञातावस्थायां विषयागारपरिणामो न सम्भवति अतः सर्वदा विवेकख्यातिः इत्यवस्था जायते एवं मुक्तिः सिद्ध्यति योगाभ्याससहायेन शारीरिक मानसिक स्वास्थ्यं लभ्यते योगाभ्यासः न केवलं मानसिक शारीरिक आरोग्याय अपि तु
have already taken your time, so kindly conclude.
अपि तु मोक्षसङ्कल्पाय च भवति मानसिक आरोग्याय सम्पादनेन कैवल्यपदमार्गः अपि लभ्यते लोकाः समस्ताः सुखिनो भवन्तु धन्यवादः
Okay, thank you, Ashwati, for making your nice presentation. Now the floor is open for discussion. If you have any question, you can ask to the speaker. Make sure that you can just make your question specific to the speaker, and we won't be able to take more than one question to each speaker. Yeah.
Is there anyone?
From online, those who are connected, if there's anyone, you can ask question.
Yeah, I have a question for Sastri ji, Mahesh Sastri. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Go ahead, please.
Yeah. I have a question for Sastri ji. That he talks about the Vedic roots of Yoga Sutra, but now in the recent days, many people claim that actually Yoga Sutra was influenced by Buddhism, like Pradeep Gokhale and other scholars. So what is his take on that? Does he have any claiming the Vedic roots of Yoga Sutra? Thanks.
Sir, please unmute for online participants. I request you, please unmute, sir.
Yeah, it was muted. And whom you have asked this question?
This Sastri, Kulasendra, or somewhere from there,
I don't
that
know
who has Chandan.
everything. Yeah, come and repeat and make sure whom you are asking your question.
Yeah, I'm asking this Sastri Kulasendra ka.
So,
I think there is no Shastri. It is Doctor.
I think in this who has this Chandan on his forehead.
I'm not sure whom he is asking. That is Mahesh Sharma, I guess.
No, he's talking about
Mahesh Sharma, yes, Mahesh
Yes.
Sharma.
So Mahesh Sharma, are you there, Dr. Mahesh Sharma? He is not responding, sir. So once he will come back, you can just ask your question. Now we have another person who wants to ask question to some particular speaker.
sorry too, I guess this time we are unmuted. And here is the thing. My biggest concern is that entire discourse of Indian philosophy is plunging into the dungeon of liberated oriented philosophy. We must accept the philosophy in earthly dimension too. Otherwise, the philosophy will vanish in some sort of magical world. I mean, magical realism. If I would take the recourse to the Salman Rushdie and Marquez writing, because we are very much confined to one dimension. Just this is some sort of binary perception when we are weeding out the other dimension, and that would reduce our entire discourse. Because I have seen that if someone is painter, he has made a painting, and what about his truth? What about his philosophy? For him, for Picasso, his painting is his philosophy, his painting is his truth, his finding is truth. For Marquez, his writing 100 Years of Solitude is his truth. And for a philosopher, his cosmic truth and his quest for eternal knowledge is truth. Then what would be the amalgamation of if we don't consider the earthly beauty and earthly presence and earthly aesthetics as well in our ancient Indian philosophical system? That's my question. Anybody can answer to that question.
From the speakers, is there anyone who would like to answer this question? Or we can.
I would like to say something if I'm allowed. Am I audible, sir?
Yes,
Sir?
you're audible. Yeah.
Yeah, Abhinav often asks such kind of radical and question, and I appreciate his courage. However, I also said this thing in my presentation that when we ask any question or when we propose any idea, it is historically conditioned. Hegel also proposed this thing. So when he is proposing this postmodern idea or postmodern question, he may try to think from his point of view, like rather than searching answer from any particular scholar who is thinking from classical point of view or another person who is thinking from modern or postmodern point of view. So from a postmodern point of view, if you ask any question, I do not think anyone would be able to answer such kind of question. However, only the person who is asking the question would be able to answer that. However, I appreciate his question that we should affirm the life affirming philosophy. So this is the thing I wanted to say. Thank you.
So since we are running short of time, now we would like to invite our chair of the session for his remarks. Okay, so since our felicitation of our another chair is due, I would like to request Dr. Rajiv, please.
Where are you not seen now? Not seen. On the day seen after it did not appear at all. No. Yes. What happened?
Please felicitate our Professor Srivastava Madam.
Or give the numbers. I'll speak to them. Only give me
Thank you, Dr. Rajiv. Now I would like to request Professor D.N. Tiwari, sir, for his valuable remarks. Thank you.
Then under the national Sanskrit University, they talk about same thing, no? National Sanskrit University. Vidyapit, both are so different. Oh. Now is the national Sanskrit.
Respected head of the department,
Now,
Professor Anand Misra ji, Jyotsna ji, SP Pandey was there, and other colleagues, Professor Maurya, who was very nicely comparing this session. I think I will do better in Hindi. So, सुबह से बहस हो रही है, बहुत सारी बातें निकल के आई होंगी, जिसमें से कुछ हमने सुना और कुछ नहीं सुना, लेकिन इस सत्र में इस विषय पर जितना विद्वानों ने अपने लेख पढ़े हैं, उससे पूरा सांख्य योग कवर हो जाता है और सबके जो पेपर्स थे कोई न कोई एक नई बात जरूर कहते हैं। यही नहीं, कुछ in comparison to Plato, Sankhya philosophy, in comparison to Shankar. So they explained the macrocosm and microcosm. So it was brilliant paper. And I am thanking all the presenters for their brilliant papers. सांख्य योग दर्शन की फिलॉसफी, सांख्य द फिलॉसफी ऑफ योग, इट रियल, इससे सुनने पर लोगों को ये लगता है क्या मतलब, सांख्य जो है फिलॉसफी, योग की फिलॉसफी है, योग का अपना स्वतंत्र फिलॉसफी नहीं है। और अगर इसको रिवर्स कर दीजिए, योग द फिलॉसफी ऑफ सांख्य, तो भी आपको यही प्रश्न उठेगा, व्हाट डज इट मीन? आर द फिलोसॉफिकल एस्पेक्ट इज सेपरेट फ्रॉम द प्रैक्टिकल एस्पेक्ट? आप देखें ऋग्वेद से ही सांख्य और योग, कपिल की चर्चा होती रही है, और आगे चल करके उपनिषद आदि में तरह तरह की उपनिषदें हैं, योग बिंदु उपनिषद है, नाद बिंदु उपनिषद है, और श्वेताश्वतर, कठोपनिषद, बहुत तरह के योगों का विकास हो चुका था, और इंडिपेंडेंट बहुत तरह के योगों का, यहाँ तक कि अद्वैत वेदांत का जो ध्यान योग है वो भी उपनिषदों में विकसित हो चुका था, अलग अलग ढंग के योग विकसित हो चुके थे। अब ये कहे कि इनकी कोई फिलॉसफी नहीं थी, उसकी सांख्य की ही फिलॉसफी हुई, तो आप उसके पक्ष में तर्क दे सकते हैं, पर यह मानना पड़ेगा कि जो आपके पास सांख्य का अभी जो शास्त्र पढ़ाया जाता है वो है सांख्यकारिका, वो पहली शताब्दी ईसा पूर्व या इसके आसपास की है, जबकि पतंजलि योग सूत्र दूसरी शताब्दी का है, 200 वर्ष पहले ईसा के है। तो डिफरेंस है, पहले योग सूत्र है, उसके बाद ये सांख्यकारिका है। अब इसमें एक बात होती है, पढ़ने से लगता है कि योग दर्शन ने सांख्य को एसिमिलेट किया और ब्लेंड किया, ब्लेंडेड तो मिश्रित किया, ऐसा लोग कह सकते हैं। और ठीक इसी ढंग से सांख्य के ईश्वर कृष्ण ने पतंजलि के योग को ब्लेंड किया, एसिमिलेट किया, ये एक बात आ सकती है, और पहले भी इस तरह की डिबेट होती रही है कि अब इस स्थिति में किसको महत्वपूर्ण माने, देयर इज ब्लेंडिंग है बोथ। और अगर बात मेटाफिजिक्स की, तो कोई अपने टेक्स्ट का मेटाफिजिक्स लक्ष्य बनाता है, उसे भी वहीं जाना है, और कोई साइकोलॉजी और जो प्रैक्टिकल मेडिटेशंस हैं उसको बना सकता है, उसका भी लक्ष्य वही है। क्योंकि अगर देखें तो दोनों की फिलॉसफी तो एक ही है, पजिल भी एक ही है। पजिल क्या है? ये जो प्रकृति का नेट है, इस प्रकृति के वेब से मुक्ति कैसे मिले, हम मुक्त कैसे हों, ये पजिल है। और यही फिलॉसफी है कि हम इस तरह से मुक्त हो सकते हैं। सांख्य ने कहा विवेक ख्याति से मुक्त हो सकते हैं, बाई नोइंग दी व्यक्ताव्यक्तज्ञ, और योग फिलॉसफी ने कहा स्वरूप प्राप्ति, चित्त वृत्तियों के निरोध से। तो योग को भी बहुत सारे लोग चित्त वृत्ति निरोध ही समझते हैं, बट दैट इज नॉट ट्रू। ठीक चित्त वृत्ति निरोध वाली जो दूसरी कारिका है, उसके बाद जो तीसरा सूत्र है वो है तदा द्रष्टु स्वरूपे अवस्थानम। चित्त वृत्ति अगर निरोध हो जाए तो दृष्टा अपने स्वरूप में आ जाएगा। तो पजिल यही है कि हाउ टू गेट रीड ऑफ दी वेव ऑफ दी प्रकृति। प्रकृति माने आप, हम जो जीव हैं, सब इसको पुरुष कहते हैं। जब इसकी मुक्ति होती है तो उसके लिए पुमान शब्द आता है, माने जो शरीरी है उसकी ही मुक्ति होती है। इस तरह से देखा जाए तो सांख्य और योग का दोनों का पजिल एक ही है और फिलॉसफी भी एक तरह से चलती है। मेथड अलग अलग है, अप्रोचेज अलग अलग है, बट जो एरिया है वो एक ही है। तो ये तो मना इंसाफी हो जाएगी अगर कहें सांख्य दी फिलॉसफी ऑफ योग है, बट ऐसा नहीं है। लेकिन इसके एडवर्स को भी हम अस्वीकार नहीं कर सकते, क्योंकि दोनों में इस तरह की ब्लेंडिंग है, यू कैन नॉट सेपरेट द वन and the other, and after separating you can say that it is a complete system। लेकिन दोनों कंप्लीट सिस्टम है, और दोनों जो प्राचीन काल से सांख्य और योग चले जा रहे थे, दोनों को उन लोगों ने कंपाइल किया। दे आर नॉट एडिटर, दे आर कंपाइलर्स। योग के सूत्रों को कंपाइल किया पतंजलि ने ईसा पूर्व 2री शताब्दी में, और सांख्य के सूत्रों को जो आए थे वो सांख्य की कारिकाओं को उन्होंने सिमुलेट किया ईश्वर कृष्ण ने। उसके बाद जो कमेंटेटर्स हुए, वाचस्पति, मिश्र, विज्ञान भिक्षु, बहुत सारे कमेंटेटर्स हैं। योग पर बहुत काम हुआ है, सांख्य पर भी बहुत काम हुआ है। जितना बहुत काम हुआ है उतना ही ये कंफ्यूजन बढ़ा है। सांख्य एक साइड है, दूसरे साइड, तब तो दोनों मिलके एक कंप्लीट सिस्टम होंगे। हाँ, ओके, ये मानने में कोई हर्जा नहीं है, क्योंकि एक जो सिस्टम है उसमें कुछ पक्ष को लेकर के आप अप्रोच कर सकते हैं, कुछ पक्ष को लेकर दूसरे अप्रोच कर सकते हैं, और दोनों पक्षों को लेकर के आप ये इवेल्युएट कर सकते हैं कि बोथ आर सिस्टर डिस्प्रिंस, हाँ, दे मेक द सिस्टम कंप्लीट। तो इस तरह से एक बात कही जा सकती है कि जो और सब बड़ी बातें हैं जिसको पतंजलि नहीं छूते लेकिन सांख्य में छुआ गया है, और जो बहुत सारे सांख्य की जो पुस्तकें हैं छोटी छोटी, उनमें हमारे पास 5 मिनट और समय है, उनमें बहुत सारी चीजें साफ नहीं है। अब बहुत कंफ्यूजन होता है, टेक्स्ट इतना सरल लगता है कि पढ़ने वाला भी समझता है कि हमसे ज्यादा तो सांख्य कोई जानता ही नहीं है। योग पढ़ने वाला भी, क्योंकि ये धर्म की पुस्तक की तरह से आ गई है, वो जन जन में समा जाती है, रियलिस्टिक है, व्यवहार्य है। तो सबको ये लगता है, इवन स्टूडेंट ऑफ बीए, इफ ही इज ए स्टूडेंट हैज बीन टॉट द सांख्य फिलॉसफी या योग फिलॉसफी, वो भी सोचेगा कि सबसे ज्यादा समझ मुझे योग और सांख्य में ही आता है। क्यों ऐसा? इसलिए कि जो हमारे प्राचीन काल के ऋषि मुनि थे, उन लोगों के सामने अपनी प्रतिभा का केवल प्रदर्शन ही नहीं था, बिल्कुल ही नहीं था। किस तरह से समाज जो है, वो समाज का जो विकास है वो प्रगति करे, हाउ दिस, तो उसके लिए एक ने लिया लॉजिक और रीजनिंग से हम किस तरह प्रगति करके वेव से निकल सकते हैं, अपने माइंड को, लॉजिक को, रीजनिंग को, तो वो सांख्य सिस्टम हो गया। और कई लेवल पर हम मेडिटेशन करके इस तरह से हम उस नेट से बाहर निकल सकते हैं। दोनों अपने अपने तरीके हैं। बॉडी को हम, इंद्रियों को कंट्रोल करें, मैनेज करें, अपनी इच्छाओं को मैनेज करें एक स्तर पर, दूसरे स्तर पर अपने जो साइकोलॉजी है उसको हम मेडिटेट करें, उसको कंट्रोल करें, और तीसरे स्तर पर सेल्फ कंट्रोल की बात आती है। और इस तरह जब सब कंट्रोल हो गया तो सेल्फ सामने आएगा। एक और बात आती है कि योग तो फिलॉसफी नहीं कही जा सकती। क्यों? क्योंकि फिलॉसफी तो ओपन करती है प्रॉब्लम्स को, और यहाँ तो कहता है कि यहाँ आप जो है कंसंट्रेट करो एक जगह पर, ईश्वर पर कंसंट्रेट करो एक जगह पर। ये तो पूरी खुली हुई दुनिया से हमको बंद करती है। ओपननेस कहाँ है? ये फिलॉसफी हो ही नहीं सकती। बट आप देखेंगे कि कंसंट्रेशन बिगिंस फ्रॉम देयर, वहीं से कंसंट्रेशन शुरू होता है, पर वो लक्ष्य नहीं है। वो लक्ष्य है कि कंसंट्रेशन जो है कॉन्शसनेस पर कैसे हो, क्योंकि अवेयरनेस जब मैनेज होगा कंसंट्रेशन से होगा। अब पजिल में आप जब जाते हैं, बच्चे खेलते हैं, तो अगर कंसंट्रेशन का गड़बड़ हो जाता है तो फंस जाते हैं, दे कुड नॉट गेट आउट ऑफ द वेब। लेकिन अगर कंसंट्रेशन है तो दे इजीली गेट आउट ऑफ द नेट वेब। तो ये एक फिलॉसफी है। और दूसरा ये है कि बहुत मजे हुए ज्ञानी हैं, आप तुरंत जो है निकल जाएंगे। तो सांख्य ने एक मेथड लिया ज्ञानियों के लिए, और योग ने लिया सबके लिए कि भाई कंसंट्रेट करो और उसके वेब से तुम वो चक्रव्यूह से बाहर निकल सकते हो। ये दोनों का अपना अपना एक ढंग मैं समझता हूँ। तो उन लोगों ने ज्ञान को, क्रिया को मैनेज किया ताकि ये जो एसेंशियल एलिमेंट्स है जिसके लिए हम मैन को मैन के रूप में जानते हैं, ज्ञान एंड क्रिया, अगर इन दोनों को, ये स्वाभाविक लक्षण है मनुष्य के, निकाल दिया जाए तो मनुष्य का कोई अर्थ नहीं है, कोई अर्थ नहीं है। तो कैसे हमारे हमारे ज्ञान और हमारी क्रिया दोनों इस तरह मैनेज की जाए कि अपने मैच्योरिटी में आ जाए, और इस ज्ञान और क्रिया में जो बांधने वाले तत्व हैं, इच्छा, ये जो संसार है, प्रकृति है, तो इससे हमको मुक्ति मिल सके। एक बात है कि सांख्य जो फिलॉसफी है, योग जो फिलॉसफी है, ये फीमेल डोमिनेंस की फिलॉसफी है। तो इंडिया में जो है मेल डोमिनेंस की भी फिलॉसफी है और वोमेन डोमिनेंस की भी फिलॉसफी है। तो मैन डोमिनेंस में जैसे अद्वैत वेदांत में ब्रह्म, ये सब इस तरह का मैस्कुलिन डोमिनेंस, या और देखिए रामानुज वगैरह ये सब, तो वो मैन डोमिनेंस है, मैस्कुलिन डोमिनेंस है। पर शाक्त दर्शन और सांख्य दर्शन, यहाँ तो सब कुछ प्रकृति करती है। ये सारे जो अणु से लेकर के माइक्रो, क्या बोलते हैं उन्होंने कहा, माइक्रो एंड मैक्रो, ये सब कुछ तो प्रकृति का है। वही डायनेमिक है, वही सब कुछ करती है। इस तरह कर देती है कि थॉट भी इससे इवॉल्यूट होता है और मैटर भी। अब आप देखिए कितनी शक्तिशाली है। बहुत लोग सोचते हैं कि थॉट जो है मैटर नहीं है, इट्स स्पिरिचुअल, डिफरेंट फ्रॉम द मैटर, क्योंकि थॉट में जो है एक्सटेंशन नहीं होता, मैटर में एक्सटेंशन होता है। बट ये प्रकृति का नेट ऐसा है जिसमें थॉट भी प्रोडक्ट है मैटर का, प्रकृति का, आपका, और मैटर भी प्रोडक्ट है इसका, सारे जितने भी मैटर हैं। तो अब इसमें स्थिति है कि दोनों, अगर ये माना जाए कि द्वैतवादी है, इसमें देव पुरुष भी है, प्रकृति भी है, तो प्रकृति अपने को बांधती है, अपने को छोड़ती है। यही योग भी कहता है, तस्मात् उच्यते अध्वा न संसरति न मुच्यते कश्चित संसरति बद्धते मुच्यते च नाना आश्रया प्रकृति। अपने को बांधती है, अपने को मुक्त करती है, नाना आश्रयों को ग्रहण करके, ये प्रकृति ही। पुरुष न बधता है, न उसकी मुक्ति होती है, वो नित्य मुक्त है। अब कई प्रश्न सांख्य में आते हैं जिस पर बहुत कम जवाब देते हैं। आप लोग चूंकि रिसर्च स्कॉलर हैं तो वो मैं देता हूं। अब दोनों मानते हैं कि इनफाइनाइट हैं, दोनों आल परवेसिव हैं। ये फिलॉसफी विश्व में कहीं नहीं है कि टू इटर्नल रियलिटीज, बोथ आर इनफाइनाइट एंड बोथ आर आल परवेसिव, डिस्पाइट दैट नन ऑफ देम डिलिमिट द अदर्स। कोई लिमिट नहीं करता। इसकी फिलॉसफी क्या है? इसकी फिलॉसफी सांख्य और योग की फिलॉसफी है। मतलब ये, अब सांख्य में ही देखिए, जब डिसोल्यूशन होता है तो सारे परमाणु अलग अलग हो जाते हैं, प्रकृति के जितने भी परमाणु हैं वो अलग अलग हो जाते हैं। फिर वो अलग हो करके निगेटिव पॉजिटिव मिल करके प्रकृति बनाते हैं, और उसको गुणों के रूप में हम उसको पाते हैं, सारी सृष्टि करती हुई। तो रजस और तमस काम करता है इन चीजों को उत्पत्ति के लिए, सृष्टि के मटेरियल प्रोडक्ट्स को उत्पन्न करने के लिए, और रजस और सत्व मिलके थॉट को प्रोड्यूस करता है, थॉट को प्रोड्यूस करता है। तो सारा कुछ तो प्रकृति करती है, तीनों गुणों के रूप में इसी तरह से समझा गया है। तो इस दृष्टि से अगर हम विचार करें तो इनफाइनाइट और आल परवेसिव दोनों कैसे होंगे? तो आप जानते हैं बाय डिफिनीशन कि परमाणु जो है जिसमें लंबाई चौड़ाई नहीं होती, अंतिम अविभाज्य कण होता है, ठीक है ना। तो उस रूप में वो कोई जगह नहीं घेरता, स्पेस नहीं घेरता है, उसका संघात स्पेस घेरेगा बट वो खुद नहीं घेरेगा, ठीक है। और पुरुष तो कॉन्शसनेस है, कॉन्शसनेस में एक्सटेंशन नहीं होता, तो जो एक्सटेंशन नहीं है वो परवेसिव है पर जगह नहीं घेरता। और वो जो परमाणु है भौतिक, वो भी जगह नहीं घेरता। तो एक्सटेंशन लेस दोनों परवेसिव हो सकते हैं, अनंत परवेसिव चीजें परवेसिव हो सकते हैं। इनफाइनाइट सोल, इनफाइनाइट कॉन्शसनेस, माने सोल एंड मैटर, they can be pervasive if they won't have any extension. एक्सटेंशन तो बाद में आता है। अब प्रश्न एक बहुत बढ़िया किसी ने उठाया, मैं 1-2 मिनट और बढ़िया प्रश्न ये था कि जब आपको जब विवेक ख्याति हो जाती है तो इपिस्टेमोलॉजी तो खत्म, चित्तवृत्ति निरोध हो गया, फिर विवेक ख्याति कैसे होगी? चित्तवृत्ति निरोध हो गया तो इपिस्टेमोलॉजी तो आप ट्रांसेंड कर गए, तो ज्ञान कैसे होगा? विवेक डिस्टिंग्विश नॉलेज कैसे होगा कि मैं वो नहीं हूँ, मैं प्रकृति नहीं हूँ? ये बोध कैसे होगा? ये एक सवाल है। When all epistemological faculties are seized, how there is possibility to have the vivek khyati? This is a problem. अब देखिए, अब इसको सांख्य से भी समझ सकते हैं और योग से भी, कि जब 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 जो ये जो चेतना है माने ह्यूमन कॉन्शसनेस सेल्फ, ये इतना सूक्ष्म कि चित्तवृत्ति निरोध हो गया, तो उस स्थिति में उसको यह विवेक रहता है कि मैं चित्तवृत्ति नहीं हूं, एंड दिस इज विवेक ख्याति। यही विवेक ख्याति, मैं वो नहीं हूं जो अपने को समझता था। आई एम नॉट ईगो माइंड एंड इनर स्कीम ऑफ कॉन्शसनेस, ओके ना। मैं अंतःकरण सामान्य नहीं हूं, मैं ईगो नहीं हूं, मैं बुद्धि नहीं हूं। तो बुद्धि जो है इंटेलिजेंस, ये इंटेलेक्शन जो पूरी दुनिया है वो नहीं है बुद्धि, यह विवेक हो जाता है। मात्र इसी से विवेक ख्याति इसी को कहते हैं। आई एम नॉट दिस दिस, ये जो जाल प्रकृति का है वेब, आई एम नॉट दिस दिस, आई एम डिस्टिंग्विश्ड फ्रॉम दैट, डिफरेंट फ्रॉम दैट। तो इस तरह से अगर सांख्य को, तो वो दोनों इनफाइनाइट रह सकते हैं, परवेसिव हो सकते हैं। और एक दूसरा ढंग से भी है कि अगर प्रकृति को लिया जाए तो जितना भी एक्सटेंशन है ब्रह्मांड में वो सब तो प्रकृति है, तो इट कैन नॉट डिलिमिट इटसेल्फ। तो प्रकृति अपने को लिमिट नहीं कर गई तो परवेसिव है, और आत्मा लिमिट करता ही नहीं क्योंकि वो हमेशा एक्सटेंशन लेस है। तो जो लिमिटेशन की बात होती है वो एक एक्सटेंशन को लेके हम करते हैं, और ये न प्रकृति पर लागू होती है न पुरुष पर लागू। प्रकृति बाय नेचर cannot limit itself because it is extension, and the पुरुष cannot because it is extension less. दूसरा जो होता है साइकोलॉजिकल लिमिटेशन की बात होती है। तो साइकोलॉजिकल एक बड़ी बात यह है कि चेतना जब भी जैसे आप मुंह देखते हैं तो वो मिरर पर है, तो आप यू कैन नॉट सी योर ओन आईज, आप अपनी आंख को नहीं देख सकते। जब भी अपनी आंख को देखेंगे तो पानी में देखेंगे, दर्पण में देखेंगे, बट वो तो आप छाया देख रहे हैं। तो जब ये बुद्धि मिरर की तरह होती है तो पुरुष की जो छाया है उसमें वो आती है, और ये जो सारे गुण हैं वो विकसित होते जाते हैं और व्याकृत इस तरह से होते जाते हैं। तो अब स्थिति ये है कि 1 मिनट में ये बात मैं खत्म करूंगा कि ये जो चित्त है वो चेतना नहीं समझना चाहिए, इट्स फैब्रिकेशन ऑफ द माइंड। और चित्त की जो वृत्तियां हैं वो इंटेलेक्शन है, वो भी फैब्रिकेशन ऑफ माइंड, मोड्स ऑफ माइंड, डिस्पोजिशंस ऑफ माइंड है। उसमें गुण है कि वो वस्तुओं का आकार ले लेती है विचार रूप में, अब विचार को जानती है। तो जब तक इसके सामने, चेतना के सामने, चाहे वो जीव की चेतना हो, कोई विषय न हो, तब तक वो स्वचेतन नहीं हो। तो ये थाट विषय बनते हैं, नहीं तो विषय अलग हो जाएगा और वस्तु अलग हो जाएगी। ये थाट विषय बनती है चेतना के। तो चेतना का ब्यूटी है ह्यूमन कॉन्शियसनेस का, ये स्वयं जानने वाला होता है और ये स्वयं विषय को भी क्रिएट करता है। ठीक है ना, माने मैटर जो है अपने को क्रिएट भी करता है बुद्धि के रूप में, और थाट को भी, माने ऑब्जेक्ट को भी क्रिएट करता है। इसी तरह से समझने पर सांख्य और योग दोनों की संगति बैठती है। यहाँ भी है चित्तवृत्ति निरोध, तदादर स्वरूप में अवस्थान होता है, और विवेक ख्याति में भी वही होता है। अब कहिएगा कि उसमें ईश्वर की क्या जरूरत है, ये है वो है, तो ईश्वर को योग ने माना है, लेकिन विश्व में कोई भी दार्शनिक नहीं है जो जिस रूप में पतंजलि योग मानते हैं ईश्वर को उस रूप में माने, क्योंकि ईश्वर कर्ता नहीं है, ईश्वर सृष्टा नहीं है। ईश्वर आपका वो कर्मों का फल देने वाला नहीं है, वो आप ही की तरह है, थोड़ा विशिष्ट है। पुरुष विशेषो ईश्वर। जैसे आप अगर मान लीजिए कि आप बुद्धि से ऊपर उठ जाएं, बुद्धि पर कंट्रोल कर लें, नियंत्रण कर लें, तो जो आपकी स्थिति है उससे थोड़ा बेटर स्थिति ईश्वर की होगी या नहीं होगी। क्योंकि कुछ दर्शन में ईश्वर आपके मुक्ति होने की स्थिति से आप ब्रह्म हो जाएंगे, ईश्वर हो जाएंगे, पर आप कर्ता पालक संहारक नहीं होंगे। सर्वज्ञ हो सकते हैं पर कर्ता पालक संहारक नहीं हो सकते हैं। लेकिन इस संभावना को भी योग दर्शन ने, सांख्य दर्शन ने हटा दिया, कर्ता पालक संहारक नहीं है। तो उनकी रुचि इस संसार की व्याख्या करने में थी, इस वेव की, प्रकृति के वेव की व्याख्या करनी थी। यही पजिल है, इसी से गेट रीड करना है, इसी से मुक्ति करना है, इसी से निकलना है, यही विवेक ख्याति है। इन्हीं सब शब्दों से मैं स्वागताध्यक्ष महोदय के सारे अपने सहकर्मी मित्रों आचार्यों के प्रति आभार प्रकट करता हूं कि मुझे भी अध्यक्षता के लिए मौका दिया और अपने रिसर्च स्कॉलरों के प्रति।
Thank you so much, sir, for your profound remarks. I think now we have come to the conclusion of this session. Do we have break time now? Okay. So I think now we can proceed to the valedictory session. Right.
Will help you also. ఫోటోగ్రాఫ్ తయారు చేసిన ఫౌండేషన్ పెడుతూనే ఉందని ఫోటోగ్రాఫ్ ఫామ్ తయారు చేసి ముझे కొబ్బరికాయ కొట్టరాదు ఇన్విటేషన్ పెట్టే సార్ చాలా కొబ్బరికాయలు కొట్టాం సార్, ఏది పూర్తి కాలేదు. రేపు చెప్తారులేండి సార్ మనకి ఇనిషియేట్ నాకు హెచ్ఆర్ వచ్చినప్పుడు అసలు
Now this is time for valedictory session, and in this session we have speaker Brij M. Sinha sir, and this session is being presided by D.A. Gangadhar sir, Professor D.A. Gangadhar sir. So first of all, I would like to invite respected speaker of this session, Professor Brij M. Sinha sir. Is he online? Has joined?
మల్లికార్జున చెప్పండి, అందరితో పని లేదు, ఎవరైనా ఇది సెంటర్ నా ఫోటోగ్రాఫ్ సెంటర్ అనుకోండి అంతే. నేను వాడికి చెప్పాను, సెంటర్ ఇస్ నాట్ దేర్. ఐ ఆస్క్డ్ హిమ్ టు మేక్ ఇట్ ఎ ఫోల్డర్ ఫర్ ఈచ్ ఇయర్ వైస్.
He has not joined so far.
I think tomorrow we'll sit down.
Okay, sir. So let me give a brief introduction of Brij M. Sinha sir. He is founding head of the Department of Religious Report. So I would like to call upon Dr. Niti Singh to present report, conference report. Please come. Thank you, Dr. Kalpana. And good evening, everyone, once again. And despite a very hectic schedule and a tight day, we have successfully organized this conference. And now it's time to have a look on the whole program. So this brief report of the conference that I'm going to present now is being prepared with the help of some of the research scholars of our department. They are Ms. Rajilakshmi Tiwari, Ms. Kajal Pandey, Ms. Siddhidatri, and Mr. Abhinav Tiwari. So we have had one inaugural session, one special session for guest speech, two parallel technical sessions, excluding this valedictory session. In our inaugural session, we listened to Professor Daniel Rave speaking on the differences between Sankhya and Yoga philosophies. He reflected upon some of the similar findings in K.C. Bhattacharya's philosophy. He mentioned in his lecture short-term and long-term karmas, meditation techniques, and their importance in yoga tradition. He also included some of the yogic traditions found in Vedanta and Buddhism. After Professor Rave, we listened to Professor Pratibha Graman, who spoke on the distinctions between Sankhya and Vedanta philosophies. She explained the different notions of consciousness in Sankhya and Vedanta traditions. She emphasized that the Sankhya is the main philosophy behind yoga, which takes us to the path of liberation. The session was presided over by Professor S.R. Bhatt, who gave his remarks critically over both the speakers of the session. The session was compared by me, Neeti Singh. Just after the inaugural session, we had a special session for guest speech, wherein Professor Shashikant Dwivedi from Sanskrit Vidya Dharma Vigyan Sansthan BHU spoke on the importance of yoga asanas and said that asana is the first step in Hatha Yoga. He threw light upon the importance of the Anushasan, that is discipline in yoga, and talked about the theoretical and practical necessity of Anushasan in yogic practices. Dr. Dinanath Pandey was the next speaker who presented his radical views about academic philosophy. He differentiated among Sankhya philosophy, Sankhya Darshan, and Sankhya Shastra, and concluded that yoga is neither a philosophy nor a darshan nor a shastra. He also accused yoga philosophy that it is only a science to keep our body healthy and nothing more than that. The third speaker in that session was former professor of Department of Philosophy and Religion, Professor Devbrat Chaube, who spoke on the importance of yoga philosophy and discussed yam at length in his talk and established the importance of Ashtanga Yoga to achieve Kaivalya. Then we listened to Professor Kripa Shankar, former head and professor in the Department of Philosophy and Religion, BHU. He discussed Niyam in detail and also talked about Vivek, Khyati, Kaivalya, and relationship of Sankhya and Yoga as allied systems. He responded to Dr. Dinanath Pandey as well on some points. At last, Professor Krishnakant Sharma, former Dean Faculty of SVDV BHU, presided over the session and gave his critical remarks over the four speakers. He refuted and discarded all the accusations of Dr. Dinanath Pandey raised about yoga philosophy. The session was compared by Dr. Shruti Mishra, assistant professor in this department and convener of the conference, of course. Total 21 papers were presented in two parallel technical sessions. In technical session 1, total 10 papers were presented, while in technical session 2, there were total 11 papers presented. 3 papers were added at the last moment of the session. So these two technical sessions were compared by Dr. Rahul Kumar Maurya and Dr. Priyanka Mishra respectively. And papers were presented in all 3 languages, Sanskrit, Hindi, and English. So let me briefly give you an overview of the papers presented in parallel technical sessions. In technical session 1, that was held in hybrid mode here in this seminar hall. So the first speaker, Dr. Lalit Saraswat, assistant professor in IIT Kanpur, spoke on the topic a comprehensive cognitive epistemological explication on tanmatras. Dr. Saraswat had rightly pondered over the dynamism of emergent evolution while taking the recourse to the causality with compliance of cognitive dimensions of tanmatras in Sankhya system. The second paper was presented by Dr. Baleshwar Prasad Yadav, Assistant Professor in the Department of Philosophy and Religion, BHU Varanasi. And he talked about the systems of Sankhya and Yoga philosophies, some observations on their alliance. And Dr. Yadav made a general sketch about the alliance of Sankhya and Yoga and synchronized the two different approaches regarding the cosmic foundation of this allied philosophy system, and also reflected over the strata of duality and parallel quest of alliance in the domain of Sankhya school. The next paper was presented by Dr. Rajiv Lochan Behera, Assistant Professor in this department, and he delivered his paper on the topic Mechanism of Yoga and its relation to macrocosm harmony, a philosophical discourse. And Dr. Rajiva took the recourse to the Platonic thoughts of harmony and mooted out the system of microcosm and microcosm straight of yoga, because that echoes in the thoughts of Anaximander when he made a semblance by conjoining the two frames of infinitely small and infinitely great entities. Next paper was presented by Florence Mins. And Florence Mins is a research scholar in Banaras Hindu University, Varanasi. He spoke on Ishwar Pranidhan, a theistic means of yoga in Seshwar Sankhya. He explained the aphorisms of the yoga philosophy of Patanjali and talked about main sections of Yoga Sutra, such as Samadhipad, Sadhanapad, and Kaivalyapad, etc. Next, there was Shalini Arora, research scholar, Department of Philosophy and Religion, Banaras Hindu University, who presented her paper on the topic spiritual practices in Shankaracharya's Advaita as a derivative of Patanjali Yoga Sutra. Shalini showed that Advaita tradition as well meditational practice played a pivotal role in attainment of self-realization. Then there was Dr. D. Pramod, Dean in Research and Development, Malla Reddy University, Hyderabad, Telangana. Thought processing. Sorry for the disturbance. Yeah, and next there were some papers presented by a few more presenters. Those papers, one in Hindi. One was by Dr. Rajan, Assistant Professor, Kaling Institute of Social Sciences, Bhubaneswar. And Rajan spoke on yoga, Sanskriti, and hermeneutics. He showed that how one can lead one's life in this society by applying the methods of yoga and culture and hermeneutics all together. And next, there was Mahesh Sharma Shastri Kaushalendra Das, and he's an assistant professor in Darshan Vibhag, Jagadguru Ramanandacharya, Rajasthan Sanskrit Vishwavidyalaya, Jaipur. And he presented his paper on the topic Sankhya or Yoga ka Saman Sambandh. And in his paper, he showed that how Sankhya and Yoga should be considered as a light system, and on which he reflected upon in detailed. So lastly, in technical session 1, there was one paper presented in Sanskrit language, and that was by Avasthi S. She's a research scholar in Sri Shankaracharya University of Sanskrit, Kaladi, Kerala. And she presented her paper in Sanskrit language on the topic Yoga Darshane Moksha Sankalpaha, and talked about the concept of moksha in Yoga Darshan. Then we had one more technical session that was completely in online mode, and that was compared by Dr. Priyanka Mishra. So in that session, the first presenter was Shaista Akhtar, and she's research scholar of Department of Philosophy, Aligarh Muslim University, Aligarh. and she briefly focused on Patanjali's Yoga Sutra with a thorough analysis of 8 limbs of yogic meditation and insisted on the practical method of purification and self-control for the self-realization. Then the second speaker was Biplab Malik from Ramakrishna Mission, Vivekananda Educational and Research Institute, and he presented his paper on the topic, Who is Bound and Liberated in Sankhya Philosophy. Biplab Malik presented his views and attempted to explain how, according to Sankhya philosophy, bondage and liberation occur for both Purush and Prakriti. Then there was Anshu, a research scholar from the Department of Pulmonary Medicine, AIMS, Rishikesh, India. And she spoke on effectiveness of Yoga Nidra in stress and anxiety, a review. And Anshu focuses on how Yoga Nidra as a powerful technique is a complete physical, mental, and emotional relaxation. Then Ramesh Kumar, PhD scholar from Pharmacology Department, AIMS, Rishikesh, presented his paper on an integrated yogic approach for autonomic diabetic neuropathy, a review. And he argues that conventional care and physical therapies, both separately, are less effective, and concluded that higher quality trial with yogic approach will be effective in the management of autonomic diabetic neuropathy. He also spoke about further research that needs to be done in this area. And then Rishikesh Chauhan, a research scholar from Department of Philosophy and Religion, Banaras Hindu University, presented his paper on the topic, the notion of Abhyas, the notion of Abhyas and Vairagya in Yoga philosophy. Rishikesh in his paper tried at a conceptual analysis of the process of yoga, and it was really a good attempt to show that the process of yoga, guiding principle of self-realization and enlightenment, was really a great process in this regard. And another one was Shivrachit Mishra. And Shivrachit Mishra is a research scholar from Department of Philosophy and Religion, BHU. And he spoke on the concept of Sankhya Yoga. Shivrachit highlighted the Sankhya Karika's metaphysical and epistemological perspectives, insisting the fact that yoga philosophy is essentially a science of the human mind. Then Kavita Kumari, a research scholar of this department, presented her paper on Sankhya v. Seshwar Sankhya ki Disha. And she discussed the theoretical aspects of Sankhya philosophy and its practical use. In her paper, she established that yoga is practicing Sankhya's theoretical aspects in its proper sequence. She referred Bhagavad Gita in this regard as well. And then Pooja Tripathi, a research scholar in this department again, she presented her paper on the topic Yoga Atmang Samadhi, and she gave emphasis on the relevance of yoga in this technological era. She talked about Samadhi, its variations, the obstacles that come in the path of Samadhi, etc. And she tried explaining the consequences of Samadhi in the light of Taittiriya Upanishad. Then there was Vaishali Srivastava, who presented her paper. I'm sorry for the interruption and disturbance. Yeah, so Vaishali Srivastava presented her paper on the topic अष्टांगिक योग के द्वितीय साधन के रूप में नियम का स्वरूप व उपयोगिता. And Vaishali basically discussed the second step of Ashtanga Yoga, that is Niyam. And Yoga is Seshwar Sankhya, she said, and showed that how Niyam is an indispensable and necessary part of the Ashtanga Yoga, and without which Kaivalya cannot be attained. And lastly, there was Reena Rao, research scholar of this department, presented her paper on the topic Srimad Bhagavad Gita mein Vardit Karma Yoga, and she delivered her presentation about the Nishkam Karma and its practical pertinence as well. 3 more papers were presented by Shubham Kumar Mishra, Rahul Kumar Rai, and Sumit Pandey. All 3 presenters are the research scholars of this department. And this was the very brief report of the complete conference. So thank you so much, one and all. I have already told that this session is being presided by Professor D. Gangadhar sir. So first of all, let me give a brief introduction of board dignitaries. First of all, I would like to talk about Professor Brij M. Sinha sir, founding head of the Department of Religious Studies at University of Saskatchewan. Professor Sinha has authored and presented numerous papers at national and international conferences. His research areas are Indological studies, Buddhism, and Indo-Judic studies. Apart from this, I would like to invite respected president of this session, Professor D. A. Gangadhar sir, former head, Department of Philosophy and Religion, Banaras Hindu University. He has authored a number of books. He has published more than 70 papers in reputed national and international journals of philosophy. Presently, he is vice chairman of Indian Philosophical Congress. Now, Gangadhar sir, this in house. Hello, sir. उनका प्रेजेंट करना है एक सेकंड Sir, give us a minute, please. Sure. Yes, sir. Sir, could you hear me, please? Hello. Professor Bess Sinha, sir. Am I audible to you? Sorry, you are not audible at all, sir. Are you talking to us, sir? He is. Sir, we have started sharing your screen, that PPT file that you have shared with us. We are already telecasting it here. What he's doing.
Ma'am, actually there is a special mode in which Raj sir has joined. So we may ask him to rejoin AP. That can help us. His mode is companion mode. So that may be seem a little problematic.
Professor Sinha, could you please check whether you are muted or unmuted? On your screen, you can see a symbol of a mic.
You ask him to leave, then again join.
What's the point? We are so sorry, sir. We are not able to hear you properly. Could you please rejoin, sir? Once again. So please leave the meeting and join us again. Professor Sinha, am I audible to you? Presentation audio. Yeah, he's calling. Hello? Answer. Sir, you are visible but not audible to us.
Ma'am, in the companion mode, no one can listen to him until he, rejoin again.
There is one mic symbol, then one video symbol, then one CC, then one hands, one arrow symbol, one three dot. Okay. CC, yeah. Then in that, sir, in that line, just the last one. The last left. The ultimate last button. Tap that. That is the symbol of mic. Sir, go left, go left, go left, go left. Then CC, then the left, one video symbol. Yeah, then one mic symbol, right? Yeah, touch that. Touch that, sir. Yeah. The last one. No. Sir, no. Touch it again. The left one is like a mic symbol. It was of the video, sir. Just left to it, there is the symbol of audio, the mic. Touch that. So there is no mic symbol on your screen showing to you. It means you have not given permission to your system. How can I do? So leave the meeting again and please rejoin us. Yeah, please, sir. Yeah, sure, sir. I'm here.
I got it. Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir, you are perfectly audible in our side.
All right. So, okay. So are we ready to proceed? And can you tell me when you want me to start?
Professor Sinha. Professor Sinha. Professor Sinha.
Yes, sir.
Are you okay?
Okay. So do you want me to start now?
Okay.
Okay. All right. Am I assuming Dr. Mishra and Dr. Gangadhar is there?
Okay.
I will now turn off the phone then. I'm going to stop the phone because it is interfering. I'm sorry, I'm not quite certain who is present there. So let me begin, first of all, saying greetings to you all and expressing my deep gratitude to the Department of Philosophy and Religion, Banaras Hindu University, for giving me this opportunity. I particularly like to acknowledge Dr. Anand Mishra, and I understand and assume that Dr. Gangadhar is also present on the dais at this point. That's what my assumption. Unfortunately, I'm not able to see you people, but please accept my greetings. I have very pleasant past association with the department. In many ways, what I am, who I am, is a gift from people from that department, including Dr. T.R.V. Murthy, my guru, Dr. Sivaraman, and many other colleagues that I've known. So I will try to continue with my presentation as quickly as possible, given the time constraint as well as the constraints of the technology that I have. First of all, I know this is a valedictory session. So valedictory address is supposed to be an address concluding the conference's accomplishments and saying goodbye to the participants, acknowledging their wonderful contributions to the exchange of ideas and deliberations. It is an act of bid adieu, farewell, wishing you well in your future engagement of scholarly pursuit. It is pronouncement of a goodbye. That's what valedictory address is supposed to be. However, many of you may know there is a famous Beatles song which says, "You say goodbye and I say hello, hello, hello." So let me say that I wish to tell you, all of our colleagues in audience, all presenters, everybody who has been making significant contributions to this deliberation of the day. Instead of saying goodbye as a valedictory address, I would say hello. I say hello to you. I like to say hello to the reconstruction. These are my basic assumptions. So I like to say hello to reconstruction of philosophical enterprise. That's what I'm going to do today, a kind of reconstruction of the Sankhya Yoga approach to Sarga. I'd like to extend to you all an invitation to re-engage in the rebuilding Indian philosophical paradigms by relating it to the contemporary context. I'd like to propose to you that the task of the philosophical reflection does not end by examining beauty and cohesiveness and consistency of a system, which is very important, we must do that. But the task is to explore deeper structures with an eye to make it relevant to contemporary philosophical debate with global significance. So philosophical enterprise and its task, I would suggest, I do believe that our task is not to engage in post-mortem of the ideas dead and gone, nor it is my aim to pronounce laudatory acknowledgements of the past, prostrations at the grand feet of the tradition and system, uncritical celebrations, and credulous commemorations. That's not what I'm intending to do. However, I do acknowledge the value of the past. I do see the significance of the past. I do like to suggest that my task, my objective, my goal is to engage with tradition in a creative dialogue by contextualizing it to our contemporary context. I look to stand on the shoulders of the past, seek the aid of the past, enlist the value of the tradition for the purposes of making it relevant to the present so that there can be a meaningful future, a meaningful philosophical future, a meaningful Indian philosophical future. In this task, I find classical Sankhya Yoga playing a very important role, subject to our willingness to relate to it, the assumptions and premises with an open mind and reflective critical engagement. With these opening statements of my basic assumptions, let me reflect with you on an important dimension of Sankhya Yoga philosophical pronouncements. I would like to, if I'm not able to see your slides, so I will be on the slide number 3, that is a problematic. Basic problematic. What is the problematic? I would say basic untenability of the Sarga theory as we have understood it. Problematic character of the duality of transcendental consciousness and empiric consciousness, buddhi ahankara structure, purusha and buddhi ahankara structure. Problematic consists of acknowledgement of contradictions inherent in the way the Sankhya thought is understood and interpreted. I like to suggest these contradictions will dissipate if we look at Sarga not as a cosmological phenomena, but a phenomenological phenomena. And that is something that I like to present to you and propose to you for your consideration. By phenomenological phenomena, I mean that Sarga is an articulation of the unfoldment of the world, Prakriti in its unmanifest and manifest form, to the empiric consciousness, buddhi ahankara structure. This empiric consciousness both appropriates the world out there and constitutes itself as it discovers its temporality, that is being emergent in temporal framework, which is concurrent with the emergence and opening up of the empiric world to the cognizing consciousness. So whether there is a creation out there, whether there is an evolution out there of a real world or not, that's not the point. The point is that the cognizing consciousness creates the world. It is to this cognizing consciousness that the world appears. That's what Sarga is, the appearance of the world to the cognizing consciousness. This empiric consciousness, so engaged, becomes subject to the seductive dance of the world. You know that paradigm, Prakriti, from which it needs to extricate itself for accomplishing its ultimate goal. That is, the dissolution of the Sarga, to become dissociated with the Sarga, so that transcendental consciousness, Purusha, shine its own intrinsic luminosity, if I may say so that. On slide 4 then, I talk about consciousness, pure consciousness, Purusha, a bit briefly. That is a temporal dimension of transcendental consciousness. That's what I like you to consider. So within Sankhya Yoga, and that is important because the empiric consciousness is completely temporal and transcendental consciousness is atemporal. It has a role to play because empiric consciousness cannot engage in Sarga process without the reflective signness of the consciousness of the Purusha. So within Sankhya Yoga frame of reference, Purusha may be described, or you all know that, as the pure subject or the transcendental consciousness, which is the formal ontological ground of all conscious acts and experiences. This pure subject is not the experiencer or the agent of any activity or willing. It is the experiencer, but not the agent of any activity or willing. However, in its embodiment as a sariri, as a subject, which is at the same time well involved, it is none other than the agent of all activity and willing. So there is this dialectic of the Purusha and Buddhi Ahankara structure on the other side. This slide 5, so atemporal dimension of transcendental consciousness continued. As such, the world-involved subject is essentially subjectivity, Buddhi Ahankara structure, subject as activity, the subject which is engaged in activity. So subjectivity as embodiment is essentially the existence. It is that which is there. Pure subject or transcendental consciousness is real, but is not exhausted by existence. The existence is that which is both real and active. Actuality, that is being existent and active, is the mark of the subjectivity, subject as activity. Pure subject, Purusha, consciousness, however, transcends the mode of actuality. The mode of being of pure subject or transcendental consciousness, Purusha, thus inherently to be distinguished from that of subjectivity, Buddhi Ahankara structure. That much is known. let's reflect on the temporality of the empiric consciousness and the problem it creates for human reality. Slide 6. To maintain this essential difference in the mode of being of subject as embodiment, that is buddhi ahankara structure, and of being of pure subject purusha is important. For Sankhya Yoga, the former constitutes the core of our empiric being as a manifold of world experience, adhyavashaya, and is what is pre-thematically aware of itself. Buddhi, it knows it is. It is in and through, and it is through knowing that it creates its ahankara. It is in and through the mode of reflection. Jigyasa, the very first karika, it is a reflection that buddhi comes to be self-aware and constitutes as such the core of the I-ness. And in the self-awareness, ahankara arises. It declares its essential I-ness as that which is possessed of thematizing capacity and is aware of itself as such, self-awareness. It is in this mode of reflection that it also discovers itself as that which is the world involved through its faculties, manas and indriyas, etc. Thus, subjectivity as existent is the structure of the world involvement which has its material ontological basis in embodiment, that is the sariri. This empirical subject is very much temporal in its existence. This temporality is its character and its limitation. The empiric subject, the buddhi ahankara, is definitionally well involved and includes both bodily acts or behavior and different forms of acts of consciousness as modified by the structure of the embodiment. Subjectivity, subject as activity, then, is neither more nor less than these bodily acts and modes of consciousness as they are expressed by the I, ahankara, as they are lived concretely and immediately by the subject aware of itself, that is self-awareness. This is a fundamental act of reflection. The term reflection, I want you to pay attention, because for me, reflection, jigyasa, has two dimensions, the empirical and transcendent. So this is the fundamental act of reflection by which the empiric subject experiences the world and also constitutes itself. But we will discover it is by the same act of reflection that it is also able to transcend its own temporal dimension and limitation. Slide 8, then, the emergence of reflection, jigyasa, as a mode of transcendence. However, it is precisely in the subject's act of reflection, the being of buddhi, that the possibility of the recovery of the transcendental subject transcending the act of self-consciousness and the realm of subjectivity opens up. It is precisely where buddhi is the realm where we become engaged with the world. That's where also is the opportunity and possibility of transcending. The mode of being of self as reflection, jigyasa by buddhi, is also the mode of acquiring the discriminative awareness, viveka, by the self-reflecting self. In the mode of self-reflection, the self-reflective self makes the pre-thematic awareness of the bodily acts and conscious acts thematically conscious as object of the self-reflecting self. This is a mode of transcendence or objectification of the realm of subjectivity. The subject looks at itself as an object. In a way, it goes out of itself. This structure, this is a transcendence, but it's of an empirical nature. This structure of transcendence by reflection, where it goes out of itself to engage with the empirical world, has its phenomenological correlate in the discriminative awareness viveka, which is a condition for the recovery of the transcendental consciousness. I would suggest if the empiric consciousness, the buddhi, goes out to the transcendental consciousness, in the process it becomes like transcendental consciousness. Reflection is the rational mode of discovery of the otherness of the world, otherness of the self. Contemplative form of reflection, again jigyasa, is the transcendental mode of recovery of the transcendental consciousness. The relationship of otherness of the pure subject to the realm of subjectivity, subject as embodiment, is also the primary mode of the being of pure consciousness or the transcendental subject consciousness as a relation of no relation, bereft all contents. Slide 9. The emergence of reflection, jigyasa, as a mode of transcendence. Thus, the relationship of the transcendental consciousness to the things and the beings of the world, including the being of the buddhi and ahankar, as constitutive of subjectivity, as of a peculiar kind, It is a relation of no relation, or otherness, anya yoga. It is precisely what things of the world are not. The relationship is not external, but it is dialectical. This I want to emphasize. It is a relationship of mutual opposition and cooperation. That's what I mean by dialectic. Hegelian dialect has it in an embryonic form. I think here we find it a much more deeper understanding. It is a relationship of mutual opposition and cooperation, of thematic exclusion but operational dependence. Transcendental consciousness or the pure subject is not internally and necessarily related to the world of subjectivity. Rather, it is a relation of no relation or otherness. It is this relationship of otherness that gives rise to the emergence of subjectivity, that is buddhi ahankar structure, at this specific moment in the dialectical relation between the world and pure consciousness. This subjectivity, the principle of I-ness, also constitutes the core of temporality. It is a being which is essentially temporal. The actuality of our concrete experiential existence also provides the mode of the discernment of the temporality. Herein, we discover that the past is my past in the present. The past is my past in the present. This synthesis of temporality as a mindness of subjectivity, ahankara structure, is an ontological relation which unites the past to the present. The Sankhya Yoga ontology would then claim that the past and present are identical, would never claim such a thing. Evidently, past is not present. There is a radical distinction between the two dimensions of temporal existence. But despite this fact that they are not identical, they are internally related to my subjectivity. As my past and my present, they manifest as lived entity. That's how I say empiric consciousness is the very fulcrum of the Sahika. It is my world that I'm talking about. This is my world from which I need to free myself. The transcendental consciousness and the temporal structure. So what is the relationship of the transcendental pure subject Purusha, which is ontologically speaking, other than the world-involved subject, Buddhi Ahankar, to the temporal structuring of the world-involved subject? What is that relationship? You ask that question, hopefully. And within the Sankhya Yoga framework, I would argue time and temporal relations of the past, present, and future cannot, ontologically speaking, be grounded in pure consciousness or the transcendental subject, which is intrinsically non-temporal. Any attempt to locate the ontological, the ground of temporal relations in the transcendental subject Purusha, which is essentially non-temporal, will imply the reduction of the temporal dimension of being to pure duration or non-endurance, which is not a case of endurance. So I come to slide 11, reflection. I talked about reflection in a very significant way. I like to suggest reflection itself is dialectical activity, and it has two dimensions. Now, that dimension I want to make it very clear now. It is a reflection as discovery and reflection as recovery. In the first mode, reflection, it discovers itself and it discovers the world. In second mode, its reflection, it recovers its original form. That is the pure consciousness. Sankhya Yoga points out that only a unity which has a built-in structure and differentiation can account for temporal performance and temporal change. That's the empiric consciousness. That's the reflection in its discovery mode. Prakriti is postulated as a realm of being which has such a structure. Within the Sankhya Yoga frame of reference, the subjectivity as the principle of I-ness is the ground of the ontological distinction of past, present, and future. As my past, my present, my future. Precisely because this principle as its objective reference point in Prakriti manifest and manifest the world which is the ground of temporal differentiation. But also it is temporal permanence, that is the parinami nityata and change. Pure consciousness or the transcendental subject, however, is separated from this self-constituting unity of temporal experience in a radical way. Purusa is not temporal, either at change or at permanence. It is immovable constant. That is the kutastha. It is not affected by past, present, and future mode of being. For it is what it is, unaffected, self-identical, unchanged, and unmoved. There is a past for a being who is what he is not and is not what he is. For a being who is in a state of dialectical relation to something which is of the nature of an other to it. So the being and another to it. This being in dialectical relation of otherness with Purusha, with the Ahankar, is the necessary condition for the possibility of the strange experience of lived time as both unity and disjunction. Pure consciousness, transcendent subject, on the other hand, is a unity unto itself, a unity in isolation, kutastha, its own being. This brings me to the slide 11. Two aspects of reflection, reflection as discovery and reflection as a recovery. Building on that distinction, reflection and transcendence, I like to talk about it. Originally, reflection is the mode of the creation of the world. Jigyasa in the first mode. Reflection, the second mode, contemplation, it is the mode of transcendence. So self-reflection being the mode of objectification of the self-reflecting self is also the mode of the recovery of the transcendental subject or transcendental consciousness as the formal ontological ground of the self-reflecting self. This is the point I like to make. It is the mode of reflection that the two it is in the mode of reflection that the two dialectical character of the being of the empiric subject, buddhi, can be grasped. We have already noted this point. However, before bringing out the full implications for the transcendental consciousness, let's attempt to grasp its significance for the subject, which is essentially temporal. In the reflective mode of being, the subject discovers that as subjectivity, it is present to various kinds of objects in its phenomenal mode of existence. It discovers that in being present to the world, it is out there in the world of its own past and future. Past and future constitute the existential background over and against which subjectivity as adhyavashaya operates as being present to the world of things which it uses for its own purposes. Thus, in reflection, the subject comes to see that it is absorbed in the objects to which it is present, and thereby it grasps that an aspect of its existence is to present to and present outside of the multitude of objects. However, the dialectic of reflection also demands that by the same act that the subject objectifies itself, it also comes to grasp its formal grounding in the pure subject or the transcendental consciousness. That's the beauty of the Sankhya Yoga proposal. It is precisely this formal ontological grounding in the pure consciousness that constitutes the possibility of transcendence in the mode of self-reflection. The moment of reflection, this moment of reflection for the empiric subject is also the moment of discriminative awareness. Viveka. In the discriminative awareness, the subject discovers not only the essential otherness of its existence, but it also comes to recover its own original mode of being, its own formal ontological grounding in pure consciousness. In this single instance of the being of consciousness, the subject of the object distinction is totally obliterated. Here, in the mode of discriminative awareness, the subject is precisely that which subjectively identical with itself, and therefore is not an independent object to itself. The Sankhya is not concerned at all with the world in itself, except so far as it is instrumental in the discrimination of the isolated or pure Purusha. Thus, in the act of reflection, we discern two specific moments: the moment of discovery and the moment of recovery. Let me make that proposal. The first mode of reflection is operative within the framework of otherness, where consciousness sees itself as something out of itself, as something in along with the world of objectivity. This is a mode of discovery of the being of the self as not self. In this discovery of the essential being of the self as not self, that is buddhi ahankara structure, the self comes to constitute self as of the world. That's what we come. Reflection as discovery, the being of the buddhi, is essentially the mode of the constitution of the self as not self. Reflection as discovery is the realm of actuality and activity, and as such, it belongs to the present, for present alone is the moment of activity and actuality. Activity is the mark of otherness, of the subject and the object. It is a mode of subjects acting on the object. It is precisely for this reason that reflection is activity of discovery. As activity of discovery is also the mode of self-transcendence of the reflective self. In reflection, as discovery, the reflective self turns to itself as an object of reflection. However, contrasted with this is a mode of reflection as recovery. Reflection as recovery isolates itself from the contents of consciousness. It is a mode of disposition of the objective content of reflection founded on individuality, that is ahankara. Idea of that vairagya entering into the frame of reference. Reflection as viveka, discrimination, is concomitant with vairagya, disposition. Reflection as recovery, it is not vairagya of things, it is a vairagya of the engagement with the world that opens itself to the world that I have claimed for myself. Reflection as recovery is pure contemplation and makes possible the being of consciousness in its pure form. The being of consciousness in its pure form, when seen from the perspective of temporality, manifests the very characteristic eternity precisely in the sense of non-temporality, that is timelessness. It is a dissolution of the inner structure of reflection and activity. There is no more activity. The subjectivity ceases to be. It is in the present, but it happens in the present. It is the dissolution of the inner structure of reflection and activity in the present, which comprises the past and future as an ontological relation within the structure of subjectivity. Reflection as contemplation is deliverance from activity of the present. Present itself undergoes a metamorphosis, that it comes to be a pure present, or a now with capital N, which is essentially eternity. It is a present that is there forever. The present in which I am, pure being, pure consciousness that I am. While the now of the subjectivity as temporality is always fragmentary and incomplete, the now with the capital N of the transcendental subject is essentially limitless in the sense that it is complete. It is infinite presence. It must here be noted that this transcendence of the temporal now is itself a function of the present. The dialectical character of the relationship of the world and the consciousness is nowhere more concretely discernible than in this structure of the present, with capital P. The present, which is eminently the moment of the world involvement and subject activity, is also at once the moment of the transcendence of the world of subjectivity. It is in the present that the self-reflecting self undergoes a complete metamorphosis. It emerges essentially what it is, as a pure consciousness, bereft of all vicissitudes, dispersions, contradictions of the realm of objective being. The content goes out. In this sense, Sankhya Yoga, I will call in the present, this happens, so I will call Sankhya Yoga is a soteriology of the present. Many of you understand that. For some students, I would say it is a salvational science. It is a salvational soteriology. It is a salvational science which is engaged with the present, that there is salvation in the present, not in the future. That distinguishes Indian frame of reference from the eschatological salvation of the Western world. Salvation attained in the present, and thus a soteriology which is non-eschatological. Slide 12, please. Transcendence in the moment of present. The non-eschatological soteriology, I would like to conclude here very quickly, is not without reason that the system speaks of contemplation on the moment as a mode of the being of eternity. This moment, the moment of the present on which the reflective self reflects, is also when the whole universe seems to undergo a radical change. The world is no more the same that self has known. This is also the moment of the dawn of the discriminative awareness, which coincides with the transcending of the realm of temporality, the realm of limited now, into the realm of eternity, the realm of eternal now. The realm of Purusha, in isolation from the world of activities, is the realm of eternity. It is the mode of being the infinitude. Let me conclude quickly, if you give me a moment. So, transcendence, slide 13, transcendence in the moment of the present, non-eschatological, soteriology continues. In the mode of being of subjectivity, the mutual otherness of the subject and object, or consciousness in its content, is constantly and steadily overcome. It is subject to systematic disappearance, and this is what is implied by becoming aware of something. Awareness or experience, and in a sense, the very structure of the disappearance of consciousness as consciousness, as entailing the otherness of the subject and object. This is a mode of the being of impering consciousness, which is always consciousness of chitta, buddhi, etc. However, phenomenologically speaking, the structure of the disappearance of the consciousness discernible in the experience of temporal becoming or temporality also provides a clue to the transcendence of temporality. If empiric consciousness loses itself partially in the experience of temporality, it loses itself completely in the experience of the eternity. Thus is accomplished through self-reflection or critical reflection. This is accomplished through self-reflection or critical reflection as a mode of transcendence, which thus seems intrinsic to the very structure of consciousness as reflection. The soteriology of the present, as exemplified by Psych Yoga, suggests a relationship of the mutual reciprocity between the mundane and the transcendent. The relationship of the world of temporality and transcendent is not of mere opposition and conflict. Rather, the relationship is one of opposition and cooperation, conflict and complement. The dialectic that I see to be the very fundamental basis and accomplishment of the beginning of the jigyasa in reflection as discovery and termination of the jigyasa in the form of recovery. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to convey to you my little limited understanding of the Sankhya Yoga thought within the context of our contemporary phenomenological idiom, where cosmological understanding of Sarga can become problematic. Once again, I want to express my deepest gratitude to you all for being here and engaging me in some kind of deliberative engagement. Thank you so much, you all, the audience, and Dr. Mishra, Dr. Gangadharji, and everybody else. I'm sorry I'm not able to see you all, and I'm not able to express my gratitude in any other way. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for your informative lecture. Now, I would like to invite the president of the session, Professor D. Kadhekar. Sir, please. Sir, you are not audible.
Yes, I am audible.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Let me say a few words. Okay. I'm thankful to Kalpana
Thank you, sir.
to give me this opportunity, inspired by Professor Anand Mishra ji, to be associated with this highly brilliant scholars gathering, including the last speaker, chief speaker, Professor Brajamohan Sinha ji. He is known to me for quite a long time. For this few periods of years, I'm not able to contact him, but now I'm seeing him face to face on the line. Okay, really, I feel proud that Sinha has given a very brilliant presentation, not only presentation, but a critical analysis of Sankhya Yoga system of Indian system of philosophy. He has given several new points. He has opened our eyes to look at the Sankhya Yoga philosophy in a different angle. Besides the traditional view of Sankhya, we have to go a very critical and reflective thinking over the Sankhya. That is the foundation of yoga. that which helps us for the chitta vritti nirodha. So he has really very correctly pointed out that this theory of yoga and Sankhya from temporal dimension of transcendental consciousness brings us two things, the discovery and recovery of the consciousness. Let us let us ponder over this way of thinking about these classical systems of philosophy of yoga. Really, it is very highlighting and very encouraging and spirited lecture as Professor Vishana has given us. Really, I was wondering that this is the International Yoga Day for us all. The whole world is celebrating it because UNESCO has recognized its International Yoga Day. Now, you see that let us have why we need yoga, why the world needs yoga. Because there are certain things in the whole world going on everywhere, in all the parts of the world. Once we talk about Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, then other way we find that so many conflicting things, ideas, and maybe propaganda, maybe reality going on in the whole world. So really we need samabhav, samatva bhav, oneness in order to establish the Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. How is it possible if we consider yoga as a final pathway leading towards this oneness? Then we find the solution, the recovery. That is, this healthy mind only lives in a healthy body. So first of all, yoga gives, in order to make a chitta vritti nirodha, a healthy body, how to do it, and the Ashtanga Yoga pathways. So this way, we have got an opportunity to be highlighted, to be inspired, not only by the yoga practices, but also that in what way it gives us its valuable implications to society, to the whole world, in order to be Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. This is the need of the hour, that the whole world is in confusion. And to remove the confusion, we need that there should be a way. And here in Indian thought, Indian wisdom, we have got the yoga system, which has a very solid foundation of Sankhya philosophy. So certainly, today's talk given by Professor Vishana ji, very impressive, very highlighting to the issues. In what way we should think about the philosophical issues. Now there is no time to give on only emphasis on the classical interpretations of the systems, but we have to open a new way, new pathway, so that our minds, the great, brilliant young scholars, should be impressive to think the ideas, the theories of philosophy in a better and better way. With these remarks, I certainly say to Mohsanaji that let us come to the position in order to understand a very elementary sadhu's couplet who has given a message to the whole world. Let us have that Pothi Pade Pade Jagamua, Pandit Bhayo na koi, Dhai Yakha Prem ka, Padhai so Pandit ho. So why we need this? The knowledge system must work as a recovery of our transcendence, and that can only be brought through the affection and love and equality, samabhav, samatva bhav, and this is called in the Bhagavad Gita, samatvam yogam uchyate. All the things to be united in order to make man happy, in order to establish the world community, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. We have to be same mental state and that can only be built up by yogic practices and yogic asanas, and most properly the pranayam, which brings us mind, opens its the avenues in different ways. So thank you very much. I must thank Professor Anand Mishri, head of the department, and many of our students who are here for listening us from the very morning. I was listening to some of the lectures I heard, listened very carefully, and I found very relevant. Professor Bhatt, in the beginning, the opening of the seminar, he has tried to give us enlightened ideas to ourselves, but he could not complete because of the some problem. But all the participants have given their own creative mind to us to think over in a way of the sound frame philosophy. Thank you very much. Again, I say pranam to Brijmohan Sinha ji for giving us an opportunity to listen once again. I pray that he should are you here, sir, in India?
No, I'm in Saskatoon in Canada.
That we are that's why we are very proud of you, that you have given us your valuable ideas. Thank you so much. And this is the place of holy feet of Mahamana Malviyaji Maharaj, who brought from very beginning from the people, great minds from all over the world to be here in Banaras University. And luckily today you are here in maybe online only to the Department of Philosophy. I will ask Professor Anand Mishra to invite you physically, phenomenologically, not only phonologically, but empirically to be present here with us sometimes in future. May God help us. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I thank all these the colleagues in the Department of Philosophy who are working hard day and night for making this again philosophy department to the Center of Advanced Study in Philosophy. May Lord Shiva
Thank you so much.
to bring this Center of Advanced Study in Philosophy in future. Thank you so much, sir, again.
Thank you so much, sir, for your presidential remark. Now, I would like to call upon Dr. Shruti Mishra, ma'am, for a formal vote of thanks. Please come, ma'am.
धन्यवाद कल्पना। धन्यवाद की औपचारिकता कहने को बस औपचारिकता भर होती है, बहुत ही द्वंद्व भरा कार्य होता है ये। किसी भी कार्यक्रम की गुणवत्ता का मानदंड ये होता है कि हम कितने कम संसाधनों में और कितने वृहद स्तर पर किसी कार्यक्रम का आयोजन कर पाए। और सिर्फ एक दिन की अंतर्राष्ट्रीय संगोष्ठी का आयोजन करना और इतने वृहद स्तर पर, जबकि देश विदेश से तमाम लोग यहाँ पर एकत्रित हुए और उनके उद्बोधनों को सुनने का हमें अवसर मिला, ये वस्तुतः बहुत ही विशिष्ट था, बहुत ही। और मैं देख सकती हूँ कि पूरे दिन की कार्यक्रम जब अपने चरमोत्कर्ष पर है और इस मौसम में, इस ऋतु में इतनी गहमा गहमी, सबका इस तरीके का नियोजन और संयोजन, मैं कह सकती हूँ कि कार्यक्रम निश्चित रूप से पूरी तरीके से सफल हुआ है। हम बहुत आह्लादित हैं कि हमारा श्रम सफल हुआ। और अध्यक्ष महोदय, उनकी सदा से ये इच्छा रहती है कि धन्यवाद ज्ञापन में उनका नाम न लिया जाए, लेकिन प्रस्थान बिंदु जो होता है, यानी जहां से बात आरंभ होती है, उसी की अवहेलना करके हम कैसे आगे बढ़ सकते हैं। तो इस कार्यक्रम के सूत्रधार यही हैं। कम संसाधन होने के बावजूद एक दिन का हमने अंतर्राष्ट्रीय इस संगोष्ठी का आयोजन किया। तो बात यहीं से आरंभ होती थी। हमारे समस्त विद्वान जिनके आगमन से यह कार्यक्रम सफल हुआ, सुबह आपने प्रोफेसर कृपा शंकर को सुना, वो अस्वस्थ थे, उन्होंने कहा कि मैं उन्हें जबरदस्ती ले आई। तो मेरा सौभाग्य है कि मैं जबरदस्ती भी करती हूँ और इतने वरिष्ठ आचार्य उसे स्वीकार कर लेते हैं। उसके बावजूद उन्होंने इतना सुंदर उद्बोधन दिया, तो ये हमारा सौभाग्य है। उसके बाद मेरे सारे सहयोगी गण, विशेष रूप से मैं डॉक्टर कल्पना, डॉक्टर नीति सिंह, जो कि इस अंतर्राष्ट्रीय संगोष्ठी की ऑर्गेनाइजिंग सेक्रेटरी के तौर पर निरंतर मेरा सहयोग देती रही, हृदय से आभार। बहुत ही मुश्किल होता है तकनीकी सत्र को सही तरीके से संयोजित कर लेना, हम सबसे ज्यादा उसी को लेकर के भयभीत थे। तो डॉक्टर प्रियंका, डॉक्टर राहुल ने मिल करके जिस तरीके से इसको अंजाम दिया, मैं वाकई कहना चाहिए कि गदगद हूँ। बहुत ही सुंदर तरीके से समझ ही नहीं आया कि तकनीकी सत्र कितने कायदे से अपनी पूर्णता को प्राप्त हुआ। और डॉक्टर नीति सिंह इस धर्म दर्शन परिवार की सबसे छोटी सदस्य, बहुत ही ऊर्जावान है, बहुत ही ऊर्जास्विता से लेकर के किसी भी कार्य को बहुत अच्छे से अंजाम देती हैं। तो सबसे छोटा सदस्य विशेष कृपा पात्र भी होता है जिम्मेदारी के साथ ही। तो बहुत बहुत प्यार आपको, बहुत बहुत स्नेह है आपको। और आप लोगों का यदि सहयोग, कार्य सबके बटे होते हैं लेकिन वो छोटी छोटी जिम्मेदारियां बहुत बड़ी होती हैं। तो इस कार्यक्रम को हमने इस अंजाम तक पहुंचाया। डॉक्टर राजीव लोचन बेहरा ये भी सबसे छोटे सदस्य में से ही हैं। डॉक्टर बालेश्वर जी जो भी थे यहाँ पर चले गए हैं। मैडम डॉक्टर ज्योत्सना श्रीवास्तव मैम यहाँ पर उपस्थित हैं हमारी वरिष्ठ सदस्या के रूप में इसी परिवार की। और डॉक्टर श्री प्रकाश पांडे सर, आप लोगों की उपस्थिति भर हमें बहुत बड़ा नैतिक बल प्रदान करती है। सिर्फ आप लोगों का होना भर ही हमें इतनी ऊर्जा देता है कि हम पहाड़ चढ़ जाएं, झंडे गाड़ दें, कुछ इस तरीके से। तो फिलहाल चले गए हैं लेकिन यहाँ पर उपस्थित थे डॉक्टर विवेक पांडे, डॉक्टर सरिता जी, इन सबकी शुभकामनाएं प्रत्यक्ष अप्रत्यक्ष रूप से निरंतर मिलती रहीं। साथ ही साथ मैं नाम लेना चाहूंगी अपने वरिष्ठ के, अपने विभाग के तमाम वरिष्ठ आचार्यों का, डॉक्टर आर के झा, डॉक्टर सच्चिदानंद मिश्र जी जिनका प्रत्यक्ष प्रत्यक्ष सहयोग यहाँ मिलता रहता है, डॉक्टर दुर्गेश चौधरी थे यहाँ पर, डॉक्टर प्रमोद बागड़े जी और डॉक्टर ग्रेस, सभी लोग जुड़े रहे इस कार्यक्रम से। और शिक्षकेतर वर्ग में डॉक्टर संजय गौड़, डॉक्टर श्री मोहन जी, नीरज जी, लाल बहादुर पटेल जी, सबका सहयोग निरंतर इस गर्मी में वो बार बार ले आ रहे थे। और आप स्वाभाविक रूप से अनुभव कर सकते हैं कि पानी यहाँ की सबसे बड़ी आवश्यकता हम अनुभव कर रहे हैं इन परिस्थितियों में। और उसके बाद मेरे प्रिय बहुत ही प्यारे विद्यार्थियों, ये कार्यक्रम आपके लिए था, आपका था। और आपकी सहभागिता, आपका उत्साह, निश्चित रूप से ये सारा उपक्रम जो किया गया है वो आपके लिए ही किया गया है। तो इस क्रम में मैं नाम लेना चाहूंगी रजनीश जो सुबह से बैठे हुए हैं लगातार, आशीष जो मतलब विशेष रूप से जिनका बहुत योगदान रहता है, तो रजनीश मिश्र, आशीष आनंद और अरविंद जो अभी यहाँ पर नहीं है। अब मैं विद्यार्थियों से ऊपर उनका नाम लेना चाहूंगी, नाम उनका आया है जरूर, लेकिन वसंता कॉलेज फॉर वुमेन में बहुत सौभाग्य की बात है कि बहुत लोकप्रिय विद्यार्थी शोध छात्र यहाँ के रहे हैं और वहां पर उनकी नियुक्ति हो चुकी है। एक जिम्मेदारी वो निभा रहे हैं एक सहायक आचार्य के तौर पर, लेकिन जब भी यहाँ पर कोई कार्यक्रम होता है एक परिवार के सदस्य की तरफ वो आ जाते हैं और पूरा बीड़ा पूरी जिम्मेदारी के साथ वो उठाते हैं हंसते मुस्कुराते हुए। तो वो ऐसे सूत्र हैं जो सारे सूत्रों को जोड़ने का कार्य करते हैं। अरविंद यहाँ पर नहीं है लेकिन उनकी कार्यशैली, उनका परिश्रम, सब कुछ जो है वो निश्चित रूप से यहाँ पर ध्यान करने योग्य चीज है। तो अरविंद को मैं बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद देना चाहूंगी। और साथ ही साथ इस वृहद कार्यक्रम के अंतर्गत रिपोर्ट तैयार करने का एक बहुत ही महत्वपूर्ण कार्य किया राजलक्ष्मी तिवारी, आकांक्षा प्रजापति, अभिनव तिवारी, काजल पांडे, सिद्धिदात्री, मुझे नहीं पता कि बच्चे भी यहाँ पर हैं या नहीं, आप सबको बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। साथ ही साथ वॉलेंटियर के तौर पे यहाँ पर हमारी बच्चियां हैं पूजा त्रिपाठी, वैशाली श्रीवास्तव, राहुल राय, पुनीत यादव, अंकित जायसवाल, शिखा चौबे, आप कोमल शाह, आप सभी बच्चों को बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। बहुत सुंदर रंगोली बनाई है आप लोगों ने, जिनका भी योगदान रहा है, बहुत सारा आशीर्वाद, बहुत सारा स्नेह। ये भी एक कहना चाहिए कि एक ऐसी कला है जो अवसर अवसर प्रदर्शन के विद्यार्थी जो हैं अब इस रूप में दिखाते हैं। तो बहुत देर न करते हुए सिर्फ इतना ही कहूंगी, योग एक दिन का विषय नहीं है, योग नहीं, यह एक दिवस का, ध्यान सुनिएगा, पुनरावृत्ति नहीं करूंगी, योग नहीं यह एक दिवस का जीवन अनुसंधान का, मीन अक्षी, मीन मछली, अक्षी आंख, नीन अक्ष पर लक्ष्य साधते अर्जुन के संधान का। यह अनुशासन तन मन का है, यह अनुशासन तन मन का है। कहते हैं क्षुरस्य धारा निशिता दुरत्यया दुर्गम पथस्थ कवयोः वदन्ति। कवि ऋषि होता है, ऐसा माना जाता रहा है। तो उस छुरे की धार पर हम चले क्यों? दुनिया में तो बहुत सारी चीजें हैं जो बड़ी प्रिय लगने वाली हैं, हम उस रास्ते पर चले। छुरे की धार पर आग में जाने की जरूरत क्या है? लेकिन नहीं, यह अनुशासन तन मन का है, हर एक पल के जीवन का है। दैन्य और दुर्बलता त्यागे, दैन्य और दुर्बलता त्यागे नर के स्वसम्मान का। तो मेरा उद्बोधन है कि उस योगी बनने की दिशा में आप प्रतिपल कदम बढ़ाएं। योगी के जीवन से बढ़कर के कोई जीवन नहीं होता, कर्मयोग से बढ़कर के कोई योग नहीं होता। तो इसी के साथ इसके पूर्व की इस सत्र का मैं समापन करूं, इस संगोष्ठी का मैं समापन करूं, इस सभा को विसर्जित करूं। मेरा आग्रह है कि आप सभी लोग राष्ट्र गान के साथ संवेद स्वर में मेरे साथ आए। कुछ लोग यहाँ भी आए, कृपया। नीति, प्रियंका, कल्पना, आप सभी लोग आए। राहुल, राजीव आइए, आजा। जन गण मन अधिनायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता। पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा द्राविड़ उत्कल बंग। विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उच्छल जलधि तरंग। तब शुभ नामे जागे, तब शुभ आशीष मांगे। गाहे तब जय गाथा, जन गण मंगल दायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता। जय हे, जय हे, जय हे, जय 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 हे।